Oh,
Really don't know.
uh,
I really don't know.
very
It's
stressful.
so much that
Can
I
I?
really have
When do
no
you
words.
expect this to flatten, Dr. Neelam, by any
Doesn't look like.
epidemiological modeling or anything they are telling?
No. In fact, we are expecting a surge in July and maybe again in August. So
Logistics and
yeah, with the rain and with the festivals coming, with the trains which will open so much that so
Can
we
I,
are
when
getting
do you expect this to flatten, Dr. Neelam, by any
doesn't look like.
epidemiological modeling or
No,
anything
I
they are
think
telling?
we'll be able to answer that sometime in mid-August because in fact we are expecting a surge in July and maybe again in August. So
Logistics and
yeah, with the festivals coming and the trains which will
Chennai
open.
sir,
Yeah.
I think
actually,
somebody is on both YouTube and Zoom. They need to
Yeah.
because
cut
I
off
am
one of the
getting the
channels.
same voice again. That I
Yeah,
thought
that is because one
lag.
of the system is kept on for both the.
Yeah. Mine.
Yeah.
Mine.
I was.
Just
Sir,
1 minute.
Preetham has become an expert in Zoom now. I was just thinking, what is happening in my voice? Okay. So, what would be your
Mine.
advice
That's
on
fine. That's fine.
Somebody is on both the.
on practice, Dr.
Mine.
Neelam? What would be your advice on starting a practice, a regular practice?
You would have to be very careful
Okay.
because there are large number of asymptomatic positive patients
Okay.
and unless and until it's really a need, I would still suggest don't go for
Don't
elective.
go for it. Thank you.
No.
I just wanted it from you.
Yes.
If you can
He,
manage,
ma'am, there is no need. He can donate.
this
You
fellow
should
is
donate to me. Give me
enough
some
to
money.
even he's enough to finish. Even I will escape from COVID, but not from Preetham.
So I think we have another 3 minutes to go before we go live. We are live actually before we start our program. Our secretary will take over exactly at 10 o'clock. Dr. Varsha.
Sir, Aishwarya is not able to join. She is facing some problem with the password.
I will send her the link.
Yeah, I'm doing that, sir.
It's there in all our groups, Abhilasha.
Yeah, in fact, it's a very simple password.
Yeah,
AAOIMS 20.
20 years.
Very. I wish all our wives keep the password like that for their WhatsApp and cell phone.
Oh, that you are today attending the first women lecture, and you are telling like this. Now you are into trouble.
Oh, what a beautiful idea, really.
That has to be from Chennai, sir.
What is that? I missed out something.
But Preetham, in another
No, I won't repeat.
In another 5 years, this will be reversed because I have 16 postgraduates, women, only 2 boys. It's a matter of another 5 years, we will have some Zoom for only men.
Dr. Preetham.
That
Quite
Chennai
possible.
sir won't organize. That Chennai sir won't organize. Don't
That
expect
he
that.
won't organize, but Abhilash organize for us.
Sure, sir, sure. Sir, Rama sir was kind enough. We came up with this idea and he was the first person to agree.
I agree.
And he was like supporting all through whatever we were doing.
Yeah, very good.
So it's so kind of him.
You can do one thing. You can interview Mukul on this.
Yeah.
He'll give the apt answer what is required.
Okay.
What do you say, Chennai sir?
Rama sir, unmute. Unmute, Rama sir.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Actually, you're talking about Mukul sir. Mukul's actual sir has come, Dr. Ashok Dabir sir.
Oh,
Welcome,
sir has joined?
Ah,
Oh, wow.
sir. Hello, sir.
Dabir sir is very kind to us. He joined practically all our,
Namaskaram, Sare.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, my dear doctor.
Happy Guru Purnima, sir.
Yeah, happy Guru Purnima.
PhD Abhilasha. Good morning.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr.
Hi, Rama.
Morning, sir. How are you? Happy Guru Purnima, sir. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you so much. As usual, so kind of you to have joined us.
very good initiative, Rama. Excellent.
Sir witnessed all our webinars.
Yes.
Almost
Happy
all.
Guru
Yes.
Purnima, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Same to you. You're also, I am learning a lot from you. Thank you very much.
One of our attendees, Dr. Urvashi Malviya, has wished all of us, I mean, all the senior teachers, a very happy Guru Purnima. And so has Shruti Gunashekar. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Kapit sir,
Yes.
happy Guru Purnima.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, Neelam. We are proud of you. Hearing
Sir,
it great.
how are you? So nice to see you, sir. How are you, sir?
Great, my dear. So, you know, about Neelam, I will say, Neelam, when she was given this fantastic responsibility, she knew she can do it and she has done it.
That has
Neelam's
put us
my-
in a very good light, sir. Our speciality has now been elevated to a good standing among the main medical colleagues.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Sir, this the webinars in season 2 have been planned by taking feedback from the people about what they want. Certain topics might not have appealed to general practitioners like the one we had on general anesthesia and so on and so forth. But this was basically what the residents wanted in view of preparing themselves, preparing for their exam. So that was the reason why we had some topics. And I'm very happy to say that those were a great success actually. And we have a very busy week. And Dr. Veera and Preetham, we have one very unique, and Dabir sir, we have a very unique one which we have labeled as super citizens of CIOMS. Now, what is that? These are our seniors, venerable seniors in the region who have, led us, held our hand and taken us to the realm that we are in. So that is on Saturday. So that's just an informal thing, no gyan batoing, just a simple thing. Abhilasha,
Yes, sir.
has Aishwarya joined?
No, sir, not yet.
We are nearly going to be.
I'll call her. I think we can start with our.
Yeah. Okay. So, Abhinav Hire, I think yes. Abhinav Hire, so that means Aishwarya will be joining. Okay. So, Varsha, you please take over. Dr. Varsha?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Please.
Good morning, all.
Because Abhinav has joined.
Yeah, Abhinav has joined.
Yeah. Shall I start?
Yeah.
Good morning, all. Today, it's 4th July. And as you all know, it is a very auspicious day. It is Guru Purnima. It is also called as Vyas Purnima. Let us pay respect to all our gurus. And as rightly said by Neelam madam just now, there is so much to learn from all of us. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Dev Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Guruve Namaha. I, Dr. Varsha Manekar, on behalf of Central Academy of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery, welcomes all of you for this spacious session hosted by CIOMS. With all respect, I welcome Dr. Neelam Andrade, our guest of honor. Happy to welcome Dr. Veera, President, and Dr. Preetham Shetty, Secretary of AOMSI. A warm welcome to all senior members of CIOMS, our today's speaker, Dr. Aishwarya Nair, all esteemed participants, along with all residents. Using this time of lockdown and the technology, we started our webinars in April 2020. And then today is our 24th webinar. And our sole motto was sharing of the knowledge from experts, from our specialty, beyond our specialty. We have come today with this special day. We witnessed the esteemed speakers as well as participants from all over nation and from all over world. We also had our own learning process, as rightly said by Dr. Shenoy. We are extremely thankful to all. As respect to the women fraternity of Max Facts, we planned this special session from 5th to 10th July, a women's special week. Webinar,
11:30, right?
webinar by women speakers, moderators, for all the participants. The strong women power in Max Facts. Our expert speakers in coming days are Dr. Vidya Malhotra, Dr. Srivali, Dr. Lata Rao, Dr. Vinay, Dr. Anisha, Dr. Seema Matthew. And we are going to have a brainstorming session in coming week. So I request all of you to join us. With this brief introduction of this week, now I invite Dr. Preetham Shetty, Secretary OMSI, to address us. Dr. Preetham, sir.
Thank you, madam. It's a pleasure to be part of the webinar series, and it's a unique one where we have all the women AMSM members as the speakers. Thanks to the group for conducting this wonderful initiative, and I'm sure it's I've been part of this web series, and the participants will definitely benefit out of this initiative. It was a great platform where there were a lot of discussions which was conducted when I was part of this web series. Thank you for the team for the wonderful job you guys are doing, and wish you all very good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Preetham, for such kind words. Now I invite Dr. Veerabau, President AOMSI, for his word of wisdom.
Yeah.
Dr. Veerabau, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, my dear colleagues, friends, and students. At the outset, I would like to thank Central India Association, especially my long-term friend, Dr. Shanai, for inviting me to this session. It's a wonderful initiative to run a week of webinar for our acclaimed female colleagues. And it's a fitting tribute to our past president, Dr. Neelam Andrade, who is doing a great job. She has shown great courage, commitment, tenacity, perseverance, persistence, and she has shown us, she has put us on in the front of the frontline warriors. I'm very proud of her. Let us give her a big round of applause to her. She has been an example for all of us to elevate ourselves to reach our fullest potential. I wish her very best in her mission to beat this COVID. I wish all these women speakers and attendees a great week of scientific extravaganza. See, this is a gesture from us, not necessary that the women are weak or we are trying to support. We are trying to be part of you. We will work with you. We will support each other. We get strength from each other. Together, we reach our fullest potential. Jai Hind, all the best.
Thank you, Dr. Veerabau. As you rightly said, not saying that we are different or we want to show something. It is just part of it. We are trying to do something in a different way. As you rightly said, that we all have praises for Dr. Andrade madam, and this is a time for the introduction of all her work and felicitation of Honorable Dr. Neelam Andrade ma'am. So I call our president, Dr. Shenoy, to do the honors. He has been very cooperative with us. He has agreed to Women's Special Week, and he is the one who is guiding us all through. Dr. Shenoy, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Varsha.
Can I intervene and tell somebody has to unmute or close their YouTube?
I know. Somebody's got the YouTube
Can you
on.
tell your IT guys to do it?
Veera, I am the IT guy.
Oh.
I request to mute your mics, please.
So there's someone who's got the YouTube on actually.
Please mute your mics. All the participants, please mute your mics.
Okay, I think I identified it. Okay. Yeah.
Please, Dr. Shenoy.
Yeah, thank you, Varsham. Good morning, respected Andrade Madam, Honorable President, Dr. Veerabahu, our Honorable Secretary, Dr. Preetam Shetty, dignitaries who have joined us, our colleagues, Dr. Abhay Datarkar, Anisha Maria, and many, many more. Do forgive me if I am not getting your name over here, but my respects to all of you for joining. And this is Sunday is also Guru Purnima, so my humble respects to all my teachers. I can see Dr. Dabir sir here, who was the president when I was in my first year of MDS at the Ahmedabad conference. So my big respect to sir and all those who have helped us. It is said, Margaret Thatcher had said that if you want something said, you ask a man. And if you want something to be done, you ask a woman. So this is how it is actually. The whole crux of the success of this webinar series goes to the ladies who are in my team. And I get outnumbered, I get outvoted, I get outnumbered. And that's why it's basically a big success. Women are the greatest multitaskers of all, who efficiently manage home, work, academics, administration, societal interactions, and many, many more things. Actually, I got a message from Dr. Taranjeet yesterday, and she said that, it's biologically inbuilt for ladies to multitask. And I give a big shout out to these ladies because I know after this, people will be rushing to the kitchens or if it's a working day, we rush back to the clinics or whatever, the ladies also, and then come home and cook again. So, the tasks with them are many, many, many fold. And so the idea of having a women's week came to our mind when we realized that there are so many talented women, clinicians and academicians in our fraternity. Hence, we ought to do something about celebrating the women's empowerment. Thus, WWW came into existence, or that is the Women's Webinar Week. And it is also obvious that we wanted to felicitate one of the greatest women of OMFS, Dr. Neelam Andrade, who has on her shoulders the humongous task of administering UNESCO COVID-19 facility, which is the biggest facility in the world. Neelam Madam, apart from holding the charge of the prestigious Nair Hospital Dental College, which recently also is among the top 10 dental colleges in the world, in India, according to NIRF 2020. She is also holding the charge of UNESCO. Madam, I really don't, I cannot come to terms as to how you manage so many things. Your publications, they keep flowing. You give lectures, and you have found time to be with us in today's today's talk. When we think about UNESCO, right, and COVID, we get the fear of God when we put on our Arogya Setu app, and of course, I am from Nagpur. We have much fewer cases than Chennai, Mumbai, or Pune or Delhi. We get scared when we see that there is a COVID patient in 1 kilometer radius. That's how Nagpur is. And I can imagine when Andrade Madam is, I think, 1 meter away from 1,173 patients. So it is amazing, Madam, how you're doing it. The logistics are mind-boggling, and especially when I was in conversation with Madam a few days back as to how, and she'll tell us more actually, how to have built such a fantastic hospital from scratch. There are no walls, no ceilings, and yet they have come up with such an awesome facility. And it is obviously no doubt that Maharashtra government chose Madam to execute this very daunting task. It was set up in record time and runs so smoothly. And of course, we are going to hear it from her in detail. Madam, we salute your indomitable spirit, the valor, and that is why, you know, we have the honor of having you as the chief guest and जो अपन मराठी में बोलते हैं सत्कार मूर्ति for this program. Now, CIMS, I'll just come back to the CIMS webinars. This is the 24th webinar as told by Dr. Varsha, and we began early. We decided that the lockdown should be put to some use. We found some silver lining in the dark clouds, and that is why this idea of webinars came up. For our first season, again, it began with a lady, and we had 5 ladies amongst the total tally of 12 webinars that we had. So roughly about 50% were ladies in that also. The season 1, we had a spectrum of topics. Season 2, we decided to focus ourselves more on some kind of a theme. And that is why we came up with this particular aspect of having theme talks. And to celebrate women empowerment, though I think it's on 8th of March that Women's Day is celebrated, but I believe the whole year should belong to them. And CIMS thus decided to celebrate this particular week as Women's Empowerment Week, and that is why WWW. We have got a huge response for all our webinars. And in the next 6 days, you're going to witness the feast of knowledge that has been curated by these extremely knowledgeable ladies. And I'm very sure that we are going to be thoroughly enriched by their experience. The hand that rocks the cradle, rules the world is the testimony to these great women who have shaped the destiny of the world and whichever field they belong to. So welcome to WWW or Women's Webinar Week. Thank you. Now, the second task is to, the second task of mine is to introduce Madam. We will have a separate webinar to discuss Neelam Andrade Madam's CV or resume. It is so impressive, but I've tried to concise it. Madam has got, she has got a track record, you know, that is awesome. And she is delivering top patient care, her commitment to hard work, eagerness to learn and functioning, which she does with a positive attitude. She is a pioneer in the field of distraction osteogenesis and has got innumerable publications in the best of the peer-reviewed journals. She's an avid academician with more than 70 national and international publications, more than 100 global keynote presentations, and it's a matter of pride for us maxillofacial surgeons that Madam gets invited to so many events. She was awarded the Fellow of International Board for Certification of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeons by the International Association of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeons. Awarded the T.C. White Fellowship by the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons, Glasgow. She was interviewed, now this is very interesting, she was interviewed by the International Association of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeons magazine, face to face, for the segment Strong Women of Maxillofacial Surgery. Madam, it's no surprise that you obviously have to be here today. She received the prestigious MSN Jinwala oration, the best scientific paper, and of course being the orator for many occasions. She has got a vision as an administration which hinges on ACT, that is accountability, commitment, and initiate and transparency. She has initiated early clinical exposure for the first and second BDS, early detection of oral cancer, and has in her tenure as the Dean of Nair Hospital Dental College, which is a municipal college, she has initiated a unique health ID for the municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai. She took many initiatives as the president of AMSI, where she introduced the concept of masterclass. She initiated the Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery Day on February 13th. And we had invited her for the second one in 2014 when she came to Nagpur and she spoke on her experiences with distraction osteogenesis. She has pioneered many techniques and classifications. She is got, her classification on bilateral island flap and bilateral coronoidectomy is internationally accepted. There's an Andrade classification for orofacial tuberculosis, which is internationally accepted. Andrade's classification for oral submucous fibrosis, which is followed worldwide. She is the pioneer for a new protocol of ankylosis in triad patients, which is internationally accepted. The transport distraction for jaw defects, maxillary distraction, and mandibular setbacks with indigenous distractor devices. She has held key positions, past and present. She was the past president of AMSI, as well as the Maharashtra state chapter, where she has initiated certain research projects. She's been the member of the board of studies. She's an approved PhD guide at MEHS, and she's a faculty person and course chairperson for AOCMF International. I would like to quote the words of the Deputy Municipal Commissioner of the Mumbai MCGM. Dr. Andrade takes genuine efforts to keep the patients and the students contented. These are his words. I can quote him. She has got fine leadership qualities that instill confidence, inspires, and motivates the staff to work under her to perform the best. When you are running such a big show at NESCO, obviously you need all these qualities, and that is what Andrade Madam has. I will just have a short presentation about what she's doing. So I will just share the screen, and I'll just run a short PowerPoint presentation. So today is Guru Purnima Day, and thank you to all the teachers who have shaped our destiny. And a big thank you to Dr. Neelam Andrade, who has been the teacher of teachers. I have had the privilege of being in many courses and examinations with her where I learned a lot of things, right? This is the Women's Webinar Week, which we are celebrating. And today is the first day. This is Neelam Madam in a charismatic pose, of addressing people and how telling things, how it has to be done. She is a very popular person, and here she is seen at the Nagpur conference with Julio Acero, the president of IOMS at that time. She has got many publications, as you can see. This is just a small snapshot of what she has. So she's got innumerable publications. Like I said, we need to have a separate webinar for Madam. This is when she came to Nagpur on the second AM Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeon Day in 2014. And we held a workshop also, which was a roaring success. Obviously, when you are Neelam Madam on your Neelam Madam side, there's no point in opposing, being on the opposite side, because she's got such strong shoulders that she's going to win it anyway. So her cause to society and many other causes is tremendous. She leads from the front whenever the need arises. She's also a very keen person to indulge in extracurricular activities. Madam, we see your photographs every year doing the flamenco and many other dances. So you are truly an all-rounder. A very devoted family person and a photographer. Not many times you see everything rolled into one. Now we come to the NESCO facility. It was a daunting task, believe me, to start a hospital from scratch. And when you're dealing with a lot of bureaucrats, politicians, leaders, you have to be sure of what you have to do and what you have to say. So this is when it was initiated. This is the NESCO facility. I have been there. It's an exposition center at Goregaon, and practically it has just got, it's a modular design and with no walls, and it's amazing in the things, in the slide that you are about to see. So what you see here is the facility. I'll come to today's statistics also. So this, you can see her with the former chief minister. This is the contactless admission process, the waiting room. This is the indoor patient facility for COVID. There are different segregations, which Madam is going to tell us. Of segregation in the sense where people needing ICU facilities and such ventilators and all, right? And this she views from her mobile. These snapshots are taken from her mobile, where she is in touch all 24 hours. How sanitization is done, right? The various sections of the unit. This is how you enter it. These are the facilities which you see, and how sanitation and hygiene is given utmost importance. This is what I wanted to tell you. If you see here, this is dated 5th at 7:45, so it is fresh. So we have 1,216 patients, and I said I get scared when I see a COVID patient in 1 kilometer radius. So this is what she's dealing on a day-to-day basis. The current admissions, the transfers, the discharges, as you can see, the discharges are more than the admissions. So that speaks volumes of the care that is being rendered over there. This is about the Nair Hospital, and like I said, it is in the top 10 dental colleges as per NIRF 2020. You can see Nair is number 8, and I don't know how Madam manages all these things. So we salute you, Madam, and I would like, on behalf of the Central India Academy of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery, to give you a scroll of honor. I will read out the scroll. Now, to begin with, this scroll was painstakingly designed by, the artwork was done by Dr. Abhilasha, right? We debated over hours as to what has to be done. I'll just read it out. CIOMS, that is Central India Academy of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeon, takes great pride in presenting this scroll of honor to Dr. Neelam Andrade in testimony of non-peri commitment to the cause of clinical and academic excellence, for her exemplary service as the Dean of world's largest COVID facility, COVID-19 facility at NESCO Mumbai, and in recognition of her achievements that epitomize our highest ideals, we pray that Dr. Neelam Andrade continues to inspire all of us in the days to come, and that God grants her a very long, healthy, and happy life. A big thank you and in gratitude from Team CIMS. I'll just read out the name. We all are there in CIMS, but the office bearers currently are yours truly, Dr. Varsha Manekar, Secretary, Brinda, Madhumati, who unfortunately couldn't join us, and Dr. Abhilasha, and many, many more from CIMS. And practically, I think this represents the mood of the nation, right, to the service that you're doing. So thank you so much. And Neelam Madam, a big shout out and a big thank you to all of to you, right? And Madam, we hand over the stage to you.
I'm deeply touched, and I really don't have words how much to thank you for all that you have said and you have made for me today. I'm truly humbled, and I really thank CIAOMS and all of you here. Believe me, my journey in the last 4 months has not been easy at all. My fight with COVID started in March 17th, I would say, when I first started the COVID wards in Nair Dental. And it started with just 20 beds as quarantine for the COVID warriors of Nair Medical Hospital, just to quarantine all the healthcare workers who were coming positive. And with that, I slowly increased from 20 beds today to 65 beds in Nair Dental. And then after fighting that for almost 2 months, I suddenly was given an order for NESCO. Believe me, what is NESCO? And it was on 19th of May that I first was called by the Joint Municipal Committee have to go and a jumbo facility has to be set up there. So with just one order in my hand, I went, and once I visited there, I went totally blank. I was informed that you have 1 week to start a jumbo facility here, which will ultimately go to 3,000 beds. There was nothing. It is just open exhibition halls. I just didn't know how alone I could do this. Make a hospital in open premises. There was just one hall with few beds and oxygen cylinders. How was I going to set up a lab, get a chest X-ray facility, get manpower, get equipments? It was an impossible task. I just came back home and I was literally in tears. I was almost hysterical for 2 days. And I thought that I cannot do this. And I woke up the next day and I was almost at breaking point when I told my husband that this is not possible for me and I will speak to the municipal commissioner that I cannot do this. And the whole strength and support came from my family and from my husband, who said, see, you have been chosen, you have been given this challenge, and we are there to support you. You will be able to do it. And just give it a little thought, it will all work out. I then had a word with another close friend of mine in the corporation. And when he too said that you cannot back out and there is a lot of hope from you, so think about it, take a day and think how you will go ahead. It then struck me that since I cannot back out, maybe the Almighty has chosen me to take up this fight for COVID patients. And then I thought that this would probably just be an expansion of the model that I've already created in Nair Dental. And with that thought in mind, I went back to Nair Dental. I gave up my charge as dean and I picked up a handful of my staff members and my 2 PGs. My 6 staff members and 2 PGs, we came down to NESCO on the 21st of May. Initially, to start with, we were just 7+2. Slowly, over the next 2 days, I added another 2 staff members. And let me tell you, this is not a single effort. It is a team effort. And I thank my entire team who's working with me for finally going through this process and making NESCO run smoothly. Initially, for the first 7 days, 7 to 10 days, we were working under open trees in the sun, just on simple table and chairs, which was provided to us. I had no office. We had no office. We didn't even have washrooms. And we could work on site maximum for 5 to 6 hours and then run home because we didn't have washrooms. Slowly, we were within that cabin working on site. I want to thank those 6, 7 staff members who are with me, and I would like to take their names. Dr. Ankush, Dr. Smriti, Dr. Trupti, Dr. Sapna Rao, who's my second in command, Dr. Aparna, Dr. Mohana, and my 4 PGs who are now with me, Yashpal, Varsha, Pragya, Shelly, my interns. And then I got my administrative staff. Together now we are 31 of us, the core committee from Dental College who's managing NESCO. Just open grounds, nothing over there, to get the medical equipment, to get the medicines, to think of how to start a lab over here. I then got into Apli Chikitsa and had the Thyrocare people to come in. To get a chest X-ray machine, there's no chest X-ray, there is no technician. We got through CSR, there were people, there were donors who helped us in the beginning to set up. Within 1 week, I could set up the chest X-ray lab, the pathology lab, the ECG lab, getting the technicians, getting nurses, getting ward boys, getting doctors. getting all the medical equipment that would be required. And that also, you can't just do it. It has to be official, because one doesn't know at the end of all this, there will be an auditing process. And I cannot be going wrong in the expenditure or in getting the procurement, because the worry of facing any inquiries and RTI, that was another thing that was on my mind. I was putting at stake my entire career of 34 years in BMC for doing anything wrong. I don't know. There were worries and stress in my mind. I really want to thank our Chief Minister, Honorable Uddhav Thackeray ji, and Honorable Shri Aditya Thackeray ji for supporting me in this project and having faith that I will be able to manage this UNESCO, which is the DCHC, and it is the biggest center in the whole world as a DCHC center. So by the 2nd of June, my deadline given to me was 1 week to 10 days, and I could do it with a lot of help from people, from donors, from authorities, from my team. And on 2nd of June, we opened up with just 50 beds, the hall A. And towards night, we had the first walk-in of the first patient who came, slowly followed by another 2 patients. 50 beds to start on the first day. After 2 days, we went on ramping. And within 4 days, I had the first hall ready completely with 285 beds. On 17th of June, I opened up the second hall, which has 888 beds. Currently, both the halls are running with a total strength of 1173 beds. In this total setup, we would be having 498 piped gas beds. And the third hall is almost ready and is going to be commissioned next week. So by next week, Wednesday, Thursday, we are going to be functioning 2,000 beds. The ICU, I have already got equipment for 220 beds. 90% of my medical equipment has already arrived, and everything has been done officially through the Common Purchase Department of CPM. I had to rush a lot with files, move from one door to another door, get files through. Getting manpower, I was given the powers of a deputy municipal commissioner to recruit directly, for which I thank the authorities. But of course, it was not easy putting up advertisements, enrolling them, checking out their documents, getting them, preparing the shift lists for them, preparing and arranging their accommodation, their transport, their food, along with the patient's management, and running the control room also. So if I would say about the center, it is a beautiful center. There was no knowledge about how you set up a jumbo facility. There was no formal training. I had some help from Dr. Mufi Lakdawala, who was doing an amazing job at National Sports Club of India. And initially I visited his center. I got some ideas from there. I visited BKC also. Together, sitting with the architect, I executed the plan. Where will the donning areas be, doffing areas, entry for patients, entry for doctors, drop-off point for the doctors, removal of the biomedical waste, getting the laundry people and outsourcing the laundry, decontamination, and central stores. Every shift we have buses, because it's a huge complex. So we have buses within the complex, and they take the material which is needed for per shift going to the container area and then to the drop-off point at the halls. In the control room, we have, it's literally like a war zone. I am there all the time with my team. We work in shifts. And the main success point, I would say, is my tracking team. I have trackers in the control room, and we have a software system. Every patient who comes in, over here undergoes first a triage. Inside, we have the contactless booths. We have doctors who are sitting inside with just an N95 mask, and they are breathing the air inside within the booth, which is apart from the air outside. They are not breathing the contaminated air. They are not in PPE. They have the software before them. They have the pulse ox, the digital BP apparatus, and the temperature thermometer, the touchless one. The patient sitting outside has the same gadgets. The doctor points out to him to use each, and there is an intercom phone available, and the doctor talks to the patient. It's called as a smart OPD. So all the parameters of the patient, the history, everything is recorded in the software. We have the same software in the control room. The sister also has with her. The doctor in the booth, the contactless booth also has that. So we have complete information of each and every patient. And what I do is that the doctors who are there in the control booth, they are divided with the number of patients who are there. Each one of them is following, say, like 100 patients, and they go through the details of each and every patient and the updates of the patient. So any patient we find is not maintaining the oxygen or has not been updated for the symptoms or is deteriorating, we quickly have the connection with the doctor inside. We pull them up, and those who are in PPE and the sisters and all go to the patient and they follow up. This way, I have been able to take care of the very critical cases. So we've divided the wards in such a way that we have critical cases in one ward, and we have the mild cases in the other ward, and the male and female section and the suspect section, because we are short of manpower. Therefore, control room tracking and doctors in a proper planned way, we have been able to do a good job. The moment we understand that this particular red flag patient is not keeping well, he is not maintaining his oxygen saturation, we quickly arrange the transfers and get beds for the patient in an ICU setup. We have one hospital which is very close by, the trauma hospital, and we have beds reserved in ICU. We either ship them there, or we ship them to Seven Hills, or we ship them to Cooper Hospital, or at times to Nair Medical Hospital, but that is a little far off. That also is a job that we do from the control room. So let me tell you and share with you that till date we have admitted 1216 patients so far. I have discharged 688 patients so far, but till date, with God's grace, we've not had a mortality on premises. And that has been my biggest challenge. And I've seen to it that any patient getting critical from the triage or from the wards is immediately shifted out, which is a challenge we take, and have my trackers, my interns and PGs from Nair Dental who are doing a fantastic job. 24 hours we are working. When I'm there, I myself take all the admissions which come to us. Believe me, the anxiety and the tensions that the patients are facing when they pick up the phone and they request you for a bed, an oxygenated bed, they have some relative or somebody at home who needs a bed. I can feel the anxiety in their voice. And the moment I say, yes, bed is there, please come, and we'll send you an ambulance, or we'll arrange an ambulance for you. You can't imagine the relief that they get. Initially, many of them are unable to believe that, yes, there is a bed available. So we get them going. And now the system that our municipal commissioner has started of ward zones has made a fantastic difference and has brought reassurance to the patients. So Mumbai is divided into 24 wards, and now each ward is given a responsibility to arrange a bed and ambulance for a patient. So whenever there is a positive report, the report also goes to that ward assistant commissioner and the MOH over there. And they call up the family and say, your report has come positive. They ask for them for the symptoms. And if any of them are having severe breathlessness or such, they send a doctor to their house who checks their oxygen saturation. Though that MOH and doctor comes in contact with us, calls us up and arranges the availability of the beds. And immediately an ambulance is arranged and the patients are picked up from their homes and brought to wherever the bed is available. So this is the kind of support we are giving our wards. Now we are in an area, especially the P North, which is showing a high number of cases. So we are surrounded by a large containment zone, especially Daisar, Andheri, Malad, Goregaon, north side. So we are seeing a number of patients who are coming. I can say that our occupancy of jumbos is very good in NESCO. NESCO is giving us the catering for the patients, and our workers, which we have outsourced to NESCO, are doing a fantastic job. Our setup is very clean, very hygienic. The medicines, initially, it took some time, and for that, I had huge help from my family, from my friends, who came in and gave us donations, and we got the emergency drugs available, the injections available round the clock. We were working. My own husband, I would say, raised almost more than 2 lakhs within a matter of a day or two and arranged the emergency injections for me. A number of my alma mater and my past uh, students and staff have arranged donations and got us medicines. But today we are very comfortable. All the official ways are working very well. Medical colleges are also helping us, and everything is on track. So much so that in the last 2 weeks, I have been able to take 2 Sundays off because everything is running streamlined so well. My entire team is also working very hard and very well. Now the next challenge is to start the ICU. The equipment has arrived, and this will be a state-of-the-art ICU of 220 beds, which will be within the exhibition hall, and it will be constructed. Construction has started. In this, we are going to have 135 ICU beds and 85 HDU beds. And there is going to also be 10 beds of dialysis, because if any of the ICU patients require dialysis, they cannot be moved out. So we are doing the provision of dialysis over here itself. We are going to have our own liquid medical gas pipeline, and work has already started. 498 beds, like I told you, are going to have pipe gas, and the ICU also. So almost a 200 liters tank is going to be erected, the reservoir on premises. The work has started. We are having already 40 Duracell bottles to give a pipe gas to the wards in the halls A, B, and C. The hall D will be the ICU, and the hall E, the work has started in that, is going to have another 1,000 beds capacity, also with about 500 beds, which will be also having pipe gas. Currently, each and every bed of mine is having portable oxygen cylinders. Daily, I get 200 to 250 oxygen cylinders, all through official means, through Satramdas Medical oxygen coming. We don't have any issues. Daily, I have about 70 to 80 patients who are on oxygen. And in the wards, the rule is that of 7 liters per hour to the patients. 10 kg oxygen cylinders, each one of them lasts for about 2 hours, and we have a regular supply. The challenge was very much with the doctors we got who were on contract basis, the nurses, we've got student nurses, we've got some tutors, and the ward boys. I have currently with me 60 doctors, 87 nurses, and 109 ward boys. By next doubled. I'm going to get help from the medical colleges because we are opening up with 2,000 beds, and I am going to be given more ward boys and more nursing staff. So you can imagine that we have to orient all these manpower that we are sending. The nurses and the ward boys who are given to us are on, the ward boys are on contract basis. And these ward boys have never worked in the wards as such. So we have to start training for them. We orient them with oxygen cylinders, give them hands-on training. We teach them and we show them videos of how to wear a PPE and how to don off the PPE, which is so important. We orient the sisters. We have SOPs prepared. We have PPTs ready. And my teams, Dr. Mohana, Dr. Varsha, Dr. Smriti, they take individual classes with them, and every week we run orientation classes and training for these people before they go in. We are on intercom with the inside and constantly in touch with all the sisters and the doctors and the ward boys for any kind of problems, issues which come round the clock. So we are in touch totally. We have the mechanical and electrical team from MCGM and also from Rommel Group who are there 24 hours. So if there are any issues of plumbing, electrical maintenance, civil, it is immediately the people don in PPs and they run inside and manage that. We have very good security at 5 levels because that is also very essential to have security when you have COVID patients, when you have so much of oxygen on ground, when you have pipe gas on ground. We have fire brigade people on available on spot. And I have a great administrative team which I collected and took from Nair Dental because that is so important of officially doing things. The grant given to us is in crores, and therefore there is always a stress that there should be no mismanagement of figures and things, because as dean I'm totally responsible for that. So I have my very honest workers and a team who are helping me, my own administrative officer, Mrs. Parte, my storekeeper, Mr. Kamble, and Deepak Sawant. They are doing an extensive job per day. They are raising 35 to 40 POs so that we get the materials all in time, raised through tenders and procured in a fast process. These are service purchase orders, service POs which are raised so that you get things immediately. I have Dr. Trupti and Dr. Shelley and sisters who are looking into the indenting, the stock keeping and moving things inside. Complaints and issues are constant. Everybody has some issue, some complaint every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, and I have to address all of them. So this COVID has taught me a lot. I have changed a lot in person, in my mindset, in my thinking, facing politicians, facing corporators, facing administration, facing the relatives, facing the patients, facing all the manpower with all the problems, getting ambulances in time, stationed in time, having even a mobile mortuary in position. It's taken a lot, so much so that there was a time when my mind just wouldn't stop and my mind was racing because I had to race against time to meet all the requirements and have this place functioning and going. There were times when I just could not sleep. It was very difficult. And there was a time when I needed some help from a friend who gave me a little bit of Ayurvedic medications to stop my mind from racing and induce some amount of sleep. But then all that is left behind. As a team, we have learned a lot. It has opened our minds. It has changed us as a person. We have learned tremendously from this experience. And of course, there are still challenges ahead. It is still not over, this COVID pandemic. We are expecting some sort of a surge in the month of July and maybe up to August. We just hope that some miracle, it doesn't grow more. We are in a better position today as far as our patient management is concerned. Patients are getting stable, they are improving well with oxygen and with the medication available to us, especially the dexamethasone, the methylprednisolone, the antiviral drugs, ivermectin, and the oscillatometer, and soon we have already put up the requirements for Fabiflu, which will be given to us. We are seeing a good stability in patients coming in fast, and I have already with me CPAP, I have BiPAP, I have the non-invasive ventilators. I have got ventilators from PM Care, and from Delhi, we got 3 truckloads of material which came in the form of ventilators and multi-para monitors. So we are all set for the ICU, and there is good amount of things flowing in. There are many NGOs, Red Cross, Love and Care, and they're giving us good support even to the doctors. They come and give us protein bars and healthy drinks, Bisleri water, so that in a way it helps the incentive and provides some kind of moral boost the entire team that yes, we are working, and there are people who are also wanting to take care of us. There are many patients and relatives, once they get discharged, they send us very nice, very moving messages, and they call us up, and that gives us even more motivation that yes, we should serve mankind. If you read some of those letters and messages, it really moves you. There was one incident where we had a patient, because we are in the control room, we have CCTV cameras, 32 CCTV cameras are there in both the halls and in the campus. So we have full vision of what is happening at every nook and corner. And when we saw this patient who came through the triage, and he came, and the initial movement in the triage, we have 18 beds where we call it the holding area, and the patient goes to the contactless booth, and they sit on a chair and they give their information about their history. And we saw this man going there, sitting on the chair. He had walked in with a bag, and he was giving his history. He was looking unwell. At that point, I was on a video conferencing with the municipal commissioner and all the administration. I was sitting right in front of the TV camera, and people who are we face each other and see. And one of my interns who was there, Ruchanda, she was on the line, and suddenly I felt there was a lot of movement, and I just turned to the screen and I saw that one of the same patients who had gone on the bed and he had collapsed. And quickly there was action from everybody. Oxygen was started. Patient was taken from wheelchair from the triage to the bed. It just like 7 feet away. And this young girl, an intern, believe me, she was so calm and cool. Immediately she sensed trouble, and she quickly arranged a bed in the next door trauma hospital. I have the full recording of this patient. Within 12 minutes of him coming in, collapsing, he's moved out. Ambulances arranged, the sisters and the ward boys moved the patient out. Within 12 minutes, he was moved to the adjoining trauma center, and a bed was arranged for him in the ICU over there, and we could save this patient. So at that point, I said, oh my, this is like my team, the whole credit and success goes to the entire team. And at that point, I had everybody to stand and clap for this one intern, Rukshanda, who was so prompt and took a decision herself that this has to be done. And it was done. And somehow that day, by miracle, by magic, all the ward boys and sisters and doctors acted in record time, and we could save this patient's life. So many such incidences like that move you. Relatives call, my patient so and so is admitted, can you please tell us about him, give us an update. We are all very quick because of the software. With just one click, we have full information of the patient, and we give them the information. So they get so relieved and so thankful, because they are sitting at home wondering what is happening to their son or father or mother who is admitted. There were calls when relatives said that we want to give this to our relative inside and that to our relative inside. Initially, I opposed because I found that it would be very difficult. Each and every patient would want something, and to take that thing inside is a challenge. But then I realized how much they wanted their loved and dear ones to get something from home or some article or some food and this. So I put myself in their place and I said, I think let me try if I can do this. So I started that a drop box for the relatives. So every day in the morning from 11 to 1 and evening 5 to 7 at the security gate, we have kept a drop box. The relatives come and they deposit things for their loved ones inside. And then we have the bus, because this is a huge campus. The bus picks up the things, then there's a drop point inside where the box is deposited, and the ward boys from inside take it and go to the counter, and the patients come and pick it up. And that brought so much joy to the patients inside that I said that there was opposition from the security and all and the ward boys, because it became an extra work. But then I called all of them, held a meeting with them, that please do this, and it's just a little more, but think of the joy it brings to the patient and the relatives inside. So we have started that, and now it is working out very well, and the relatives also feel very good about that. At no point of time, no matter how exhausted my team is, at no point of time do they show any kind of an irritation or anything towards relatives, towards patients, towards politicians, towards corporators. We all are answerable for every patient who is here, for every patient who wants to come here. And like I said, the flow of medicines and equipment and all is really good. So the success rate and the cure that is happening and coming towards the patient is what is helping us and helping us go. Day in and day out, challenges are there constant, but somehow divine power has given us the strength to face this and get on. In all this, I thank each and everyone who has supported me and my team. And I particularly wish to thank my family, my friends, and my doctors who are doing a phenomenal job. My family accepts me and wants me to come home after work. I was in this that I don't want to risk my family and I would stay in a hotel. They said, no, you will come home, and if we do get it, we'll face it and we'll fight it together. Believe me, I'm not scared of getting COVID. There are many messages, many people who message me, giving me their best wishes, of course, telling me to keep safe, but I'm not afraid of COVID. If I get it, I will fight it out. What I'm afraid of is failing in my task. And that is one thing I don't want to fail in. I hope that as time goes on, I'll get more manpower so that I can open up more beds for the people who are waiting to get a bed and waiting to get an oxygenated bed, and how they are breathless and they come absolutely out of breath, some of them gasping, and we are able to give them oxygen and able to give them steroids, antivirals, and get them going and improving. That is something I hope I will have the strength to pull on maybe another 2 months or so. Beyond that, I would definitely ask the authorities to relieve me, because the fight has started in March, and I think I can maximum do this for another month or two. I may not be able to go beyond that. My dental college is also waiting. My students over there are getting a little upset. They keep writing to me to come back. Madam, please come back. My staff keeps wanting me to come back. So I have told the commissioner that by August 10, please allow me to go back. And my team, we have started, we have commissioned, we are functioning well, we are ready to do hands holding for the next team to come in. And sir has given me an assurance that they are looking into a private agency which will run this so that the medical colleges can be decongested and monsoon related problems and non-COVID work can start because those patients are also waiting. So I'm sure I have faith and in my administration, in my municipal commissioner, in the chief minister, and Aditya Thackeray ji, that they are doing their very best and they are working on many fronts. We are there. We'll help them until then. And once again, I thank all of you for giving me this opportunity. I thank Nair and Varsha madam and Abhilasha, Vrinda, it's been a little touching talking on this topic, but believe me, today is one day and I've literally taken a little effort to dress up a bit. Last 4 months has been only with a cap mask, a mask and goggles and no attention to anything else. I've forgotten what days and dates were. It was just working on site. But all said and done, it's been a huge challenge. Challenges come. It is for us not to get limited by challenges, but challenge your limits. And I've always believed that the divine power gives me as much as I can endure. I thank my family, my friends, and my team once again. And I thank CIA, OMS for the wonderful job that y'all are doing and for doing this felicitation for me. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Varsha,
Yeah.
thank you so much. You're very inspiring. Varsha?
Yeah. Madam, thank you very much. We could see your wholehearted involvement and we could know everything about what you're doing at the center. We really salute to you and your team. That's a thank you being with us from your hectic schedule. I understand your hurdles because I myself is from a government setup. Thank you very much, madam. I also welcome and appreciate the presence of respected Dean Ma'am, Usha Radke Madam, Dr. Reena, President Tamil Nadu Branch, Dr. George Verghese, ex-president of AOMSI, and many more eminent personalities. I may have missed their names. Now I call upon Dr. Abhilasha Yadav, our webinar coordinator, for vote of thanks and take over the proceedings ahead. Dr. Abhilasha Yadav, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. A saying by John. True to this, I may be short of words to thank each and everyone, but my gratitude will communicate without words. Dignitaries and participants on the Zoom platform as well as on the YouTube channel, a very good morning to one and all. We are indeed privileged and fortunate to host this prestigious event. I would like to extend my gratitude of my entire team to our chief guest, Dr. Neelam Andrade, and our guest of honor, the President of AOMSI, Dr. Veera Bahu, and Honorary General Secretary, Dr. Pritam Shetty. We are humbled with your presence and indeed privileged to have you as a part of this event. A woman of substance, an academician par excellence, an all-rounder with a fantastic leadership qualities, an inspiration for most of us, none other than Dr. Neelam Andrade, the Dean of Nair and now the Dean of the country's largest COVID-19 facility at NESCO. Words fall short to describe this magnificent lady. Thank you very much, ma'am, for sparing time for us today in spite of being overloaded with work. Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you, ma'am, for wearing pink today on special request. A man with vision, proving himself an unparalleled commitment to meet all endeavors with jealous support, none other than our President of AOMSI, Dr. Veera Babu, who is a state clinician, academician par excellence, a very meticulous planner who has steered the association through the very difficult times of COVID-19 pandemic. We are honored by your presence, sir. Thank you so much to be here with us. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. This is a quote by William Shakespeare. And I can safely say talks about our Honorary General Secretary of AMSI, Dr. Preetham Shetty, in this quote: a personality who is humble, yet shows exemplary leadership qualities and has taken our association to the heights it has reached today. I thank him for everything he has done and also thank him for joining us today. Thank you, Dr. Preetham Shetty. Together we can. That was the mantra of the organizing team. And on that note, I thank all the attendees and students who have joined hands with us to make this event a grand success. We are overwhelmed by the enthusiasm that you all have shown towards this event. I would fail in my duty if I would not acknowledge the selfless commitment and dedication producing a constructive working environment for us, our very own President of CIOMS, Dr. Ramakrishna Shinoy, who considers and believes work is worship. Words fall short to thank you, sir. You are a true team leader. If said that when there is a teamwork and collaboration, wonderful things can be achieved. It is a precious moment for all of us to hosting this mega event for all of you. I thank the speakers, the moderators, entire team, the postgraduate students who have worked with us hard to make this flawless experience during this event. Not to forget the Phoenix Dentofacial Imaging Lab who has collaborated with us. Though it is my privilege and great joy to extend vote of thanks on this occasion, it is not the end of the beginning. Lastly, to quote Henry Ford, coming together is beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success. Thank you all once again for looking forward for an extremely productive scientific session. Thank you very much. Thank you one and all.
Thank you. Abhilasha, were you supposed to share the screen?
Yes, sir, just a second.
Yeah. We have Saili waiting for us.
So hope you can see my screen.
Yeah.
So this is our team of COMSI webinar team. Now, without much ado, we would now proceed to our topic for the today's session by Dr. Aishwarya Nair. Just a second, sir. I would like to share. For the today's session by Dr. Aishwarya Nair, which will be moderated by Dr. Vrinda Kolte. The moderator for today's session was actually Dr. Madhumati ma'am, but because of some unavoidable circumstances, she could not join us today. Dr. Vrinda Kolte, she is currently working as a professor and PG guide in the Department of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery in VSPM Dental College, Nagpur. She has a vast experience of 18 years in academics. She is known for her fine skills in surgical practice. She graduated from GDC Aurangabad and did her post-graduation from GDC Nagpur. She has done MBA in healthcare management and is now pursuing her PhD in oral and maxillofacial surgery. She has been a keynote speaker in a number of national and state scientific events and has presented more than 30 national and international papers. And she also has more than 30 publications to her credit. She is presently the treasurer of CIOMS. I welcome you, ma'am, and I would request you to please introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Aishwarya Nair. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhilasha, for the nice words. After listening to the humble experience of Andrade madam, I will take this privilege to start our WW series by inviting Dr. Aishwarya Nair. And from CIMSI, I once again wish you all a very good morning and happy Guru Purnima. Today's speaker for opening batsman for WW series, Aishwarya Nair, is an alumni of DY Patil College, Navi Mumbai. And after completing her MDS in 2014, she got herself trained into TMJ arthroscopy, for which she has a very keen interest. She has done her mini residency in arthroscopy and joint replacement at New Jersey, USA, and also trained by Joe McCann at Miami, Florida. Presently, she is working as assistant professor in DY Patil Institute, Navi Mumbai, and she is amongst the very few in India and first among Mumbai to get trained in this advanced TMJ arthroscopy. So I invite Aishwarya Nair for the further proceedings.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Good morning, one and all. Shall I share my screen now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay. Good morning, Neelam ma'am. We are extremely touched to hear your experience. I think we have no words to express the amount of tremendous work you've been doing all throughout this lockdown when all of us have been worried and scared and sitting at home. So hats off to you and your team, ma'am. At the outset, I would like to thank Shenoy sir, Vrinda ma'am, Abhilasha, and the entire team of CIAOMS for this wonderful initiative and the Women's Week, which is one of a kind, and also for having me in it. Today, on the occasion of Guru Purnima, I cannot start off any talk without thanking few people in my life. The first two people don't require any introduction amongst us, Ashok sir and Mukul sir. They have all that I know, all the little that I have learned is all from them. Geetanjali ma'am has been my PG guide and helped me throughout my PG. And that is my picture with my guide, all my guides for TMJ arthroscopy when I did my mini residency. So my topic for today is management of temporomandibular disorders, conventional approach versus new concepts. Now, considering the fact that majority of our audience are PGs, it is very difficult to speak on this vast topic in a single webinar. So I will be covering it under these particular points, where I'll be talking of the conventional methods first and then also talk of recent advances under these headings. And the ones that I cannot speak in detail because of the time constraint of the webinar, I will try and give some literature reviews for which the students or PGs can go ahead and read later. So starting off with the basic anatomy of the temporomandibular joint. So anatomically, it's a diarthrodial joint, which means there is discontinuous articulation of two bones, which allows free movement of the joint, which is associated by muscles and it is limited by ligaments. It is also a synovial joint. It is lined by synovial membrane on the inner aspect, and it also has synovial fluid. Now, the synovial fluid acts as a lubricant and also provides the nutritional requirements of the joint and the articulating structures. It is also functionally a compound joint. Like you can see, these are the structures. This is the glenoid fossa. This is the articular tubercle and the articular eminence. These are the bony structures. There is also a disc, which is a part of the joint. The articular disc divides the joint into two components, that is the superior joint space and the inferior joint space. And it also has various functions, which we will discuss later. Now coming to ligaments of the joints, the ligaments primarily play a role in limiting the movements of the joint. So there is no disarticulation of the articulating surfaces of the joints. They hold the condyle and the articulating surfaces together. The ligaments are divided into functional ligaments and accessory ligaments. The functional ligaments are these three, that is the capsular ligament, the collateral ligament, and the temporomandibular ligament. The capsular ligament is a capsule around the entire condyle and the glenoid fossa and the disc. So it covers the joint. It provides a capsule inside which the joint can function, and so that there is the condyle does not move out of the fossa. It also provides a capsule inside which the synovial fluid can retain itself. Coming to the collateral ligaments are basically discal ligaments which hold the disc to the condyle. So there is a lateral collateral ligament and a medial discal ligament. There are two ligaments which hold the disc to the condyle. That is how the disc does not slip out when there is function, and it moves along with the condyle. The temporomandibular ligament has two parts. It has a horizontal portion and an oblique portion. Now, both have different functions. The oblique portion limits the forward movement of the condyle. So it limits the mouth opening, helps in limiting the mouth opening along with other muscles. It also, the horizontal ligament limits the posterior movement of the condyle. Sorry. Yeah. Then these are the accessory ligaments, which are the sphenomandibular ligaments and the stylomandibular ligaments. The sphenomandibular ligament is from the spine of the sphenoid to the lingula. Both these ligaments play a role in the protrusion of the mandible. They limit the excessive protrusion of the mandible. And the stylomandibular ligament is from the styloid process to the angle of the mandible. Both help or limit the excessive protrusion of the mandible. Okay, now coming to some unique features of the temporomandibular joint. The articulating surfaces are covered by fibrocartilage instead of hyaline cartilage, which is the case with most other joints. The fibrocartilage has very good regenerative capacity as compared to other joints. Only joint of the human body which has a rigid endpoint of closure, which means when the teeth come in contact, that is a rigid endpoint of closure, which is not seen in any other joint. It has bilateral diarthrosis, which means right and left joints function together always when the mouth opens or closes. Last joint to develop in the body. The disc in the joint functions as a shock absorber. So the disc basically plays a role to act as a shock absorber between two bones or two articulating surfaces in the joint. And it also divides the joint into superior and inferior joint spaces. Now coming to what is the applied surgical anatomy. Now the reason why I did not include retrodiscal tissue when I spoke of anatomy is because coming to our topic today, this part of the joint plays a very important role. So retrodiscal tissues are also known as posterior attachment. It is made of collagen fibers primarily and some elastic fibers. Unlike the disc is a non-vascular structure. It does not have any vascular supply in the articulating portion, which is the intermediate zone. Unlike the disc, the retrodiscal tissue is highly vascular and highly innervated. So in most of the cases, when there is a disc displacement or an intracapsular disorder, the condyle tends to articulate on the retrodiscal tissue because of the displacement of the disc. And this is one of the main reasons for pain in a temporomandibular joint disorder, especially when a intracapsular disorder. Now coming to another aspect, the synovial fluid. What are the functions of the synovial fluid? The basic function is lubrication of the joint. Like I said, it also acts in phagocytosis of any debris and also nourishment to the articular surfaces, which does not have any nourishment of its own. The synovial fluid plays the main role for nourishment of the joint. Now, the synovial fluid does the lubrication in two parts. Which can be weeping lubrication or boundary lubrication. Now, the difference between the two is boundary lubrication is the primary lubrication, which means when the joint is compressed or in function, there is movement of the synovial fluid from one part to the other. So all the surfaces inside the joint are lubricated during function. Weeping lubrication means the articulating surfaces absorb a little bit of the synovial fluid when during normal in the joint, and during function when the joint is compressed, this absorbed synovial fluid is released. So that also helps in the lubrication of the joint, but the primary lubrication is boundary lubrication. The weeping lubrication is lesser lubrication to the joint because the absorption of the fluid is lesser. Now, coming to TMJ osteokinematics, which means the movements that happen in the joint. Basically, what are the movements of the mandible are protrusion and retrusion. When there is protrusion of the mandible, there's only translation of the mandible and the condyle ahead. There is no rotation. And when there's retrusion, the condyle moves behind. When there is protrusion, the condyle also moves a little down and ahead. And in protrusion, it moves backward and upward. There is no rotation movement, there's only translation. When the mouth is opened, that time there is rotation as well as translation. Now, various muscles help in these movements. Primarily, the lateral pterygoid has two heads, that is the superior head and the inferior head. The inferior head of the lateral pterygoid and the suprahyoid muscles help in the opening of the mouth or the depression of the mandible. and the other muscle, the superior head of the lateral pterygoid, the masseter, the medial pterygoid help in the closure of the mouth, and the temporalis. Now, when it comes to lateral movements, like in this picture, the muscles that function are when you move the joint, suppose to the left side, the on the ipsilateral side, the lateral pterygoid and the medial pterygoid is what contracts. And on the contralateral side, to the side which you're moving, the muscles that work are the temporalis and the masseter primarily. Now coming to arthrokinematics, which means the opening of the of the mouth and the movement and function of the temporomandibular joint. When it is done in two phases. Whenever you open the mouth, the opening is in two phases. That is an early phase and a late phase. In the early phase, there's only primary rotation, and in the late phase, there's translation. Now, what does that mean? That means in the early phase, when you're opening your mouth for the first early phase of opening of about 20 mm, there's only rotation of the condyle over the over the disc, which means this movement takes place in the inferior joint space, and the translation, once this rotation happens in the early phase, there is contraction of the oblique portion of the lateral ligament. This contraction of the oblique portion of the lateral ligament causes translation, and this felicitates the translation, so the condyle can move ahead and translate ahead along the posterior slope of the eminence, and that happens in the superior joint space. So the condyle and disc together move ahead along the posterior slope of the eminence. So the first half of the movement, when you open the mouth, the rotation happens in the inferior joint space and the translation happens in the superior joint space, which is the second half of the mouth opening. And once this happens and the condyle translates forward, the retrodiscal lamina starts to become tight or contract. That is when this limits the excessive forward movement of the condyle and the mouth is closed. Now, when we talk of applied anatomy of the TMJ, it's very important to talk what are the relations of the TMJ, because when you do any kind of TMJ surgery, or when you are asked in Viva questions for PGs, you must know what is located around the joint to know what are the structures that you should be careful of. So when we talk of anteriorly, the relation of the TMJ is the lateral pterygoid muscle and the masseteric nerve. Posteriorly, there are a lot of structures which are extremely important, which is the auriculotemporal nerve, the parotid gland, and the superficial temporal vessels. All of them lie posteriorly. Medially, there are even more important structures, especially when it comes to TMJ surgery. There is the auriculotemporal nerve, there's the middle meningeal artery, there's the maxillary artery, there's the chorda tympani nerve. All of these structures are extremely important, and you should know where they lie in relation to the TMJ when you do any kind of open joint surgery. Superiorly, it has the middle cranial fossa and the middle meningeal artery. And laterally, there is skin, fascia, parotid gland, and temporal branches of the facial nerve, which are very important when you take any kind of facial incisions, extraoral incisions for TMJ surgery. Now, that brings us to, like I said, facial nerve. The relationship of the facial nerve to the temporomandibular joint is extremely important when you do any kind of open TMJ surgery, and you must know where the facial nerve lies, so that you can be far away from that when you take a preauricular incision or any incision in that area. So the facial nerve from the external auditory meatus is 1.3 centimeters away, and it crosses the zygomatic arch at about 8 mm to 30 mm distance. So your incision should always be inside this safe zone. It should never be beyond this or close to this. Your incision should always be inside this safe zone when you take any incisions for the temporomandibular joint surgery. Okay. Now coming to auriculotemporal nerve. Auriculotemporal nerve is also one very important structure which is many a times injured during TMJ surgery. Auriculotemporal nerve basically provides sensory fibers to sensation to the auricle and the region of the temple area. Now that lies very close. The bifurcation of that nerve before it supplies the auricle lies very close to the temporomandibular joint. And while TMJ surgery, it can be injured. So you must know the course and the relationship of the auriculotemporal nerve to the temporomandibular joint. It also provides motor fibers to the parotid gland. So while doing any kind of TMJ surgery, it's important to identify the nerve and protect it. Now coming to surgical approaches of the TMJ, I will not discuss this in detail because we had a webinar on condylar fractures and Dr. Nishid had discussed this in detail in very well. But when it comes to intracapsular disorders or TMJ surgery, unlike condylar fractures, I think primarily the approaches that we use are preauricular and endoral, because you want to do, it's an intracapsular surgery that you're doing. Most of the times the other approaches are used in fractures and other, apart from intracapsular disorders or TMJ surgeries. Sometimes when you're doing a joint replacement, not sometimes, when you're doing a joint replacement, you will have to use two approaches together to put both the components of the joint, which will be a retromandibular and a preauricular. Now there are various variations of the retromandibular, which we conventionally do was the transparotid. There is also a TMAP, which is the transmesenteric anterior parotid approach, which is the most recent. And I think last webinar we discussed it well. If not, this is an article which has described all the approaches extremely in detail for PGs. These are also a few articles for PGs which explains the biomechanics of the temporomandibular joint that I just spoke of, that is the arthrokinematics and the osteokinematics and the movement of the joints. Now coming to age changes in the TMJ, the basic all structures of the temporomandibular joint undergo some kind of age changes as we age, and we can never have the same joint that we had when we were much younger. So all that we can do is to work on not having dysfunction with the joint that we have now. We can never go back to what we had before. Now, the condyle becomes flattened, the fibrous capsule becomes thickened, there is osteoporosis or arthritis or degenerative changes in the condyle. There's thinning of the cartilaginous zone of the articulating structure. The disc can become thinner, it can get perforated, there can be hyalurionization in the disc or various changes in the disc. Synovial the synovial fold or the synovial membrane can become fibrotic. The blood vessels and nerves, the walls of the blood vessels become thickened, and the nerves can also thin and decrease in number. That is again an article which shows the age changes very well, which has described the age changes very well for PGs to refer. I think we can take the first break in case there are any questions regarding applied anatomy and anatomy of the TMJ. Those are the most common questions I feel. Applied anatomy of the TMJ for PGs for exams. It is applied anatomy of the TMJ, age changes of the temporomandibular joint, developmental and clinical anatomy of the TMJ or surgical anatomy, and the biomechanics or the functioning of the temporomandibular joint. Brinda ma'am, I can take some questions if you have any.
We acknowledge the presence of Dr. Mukul, my teacher, my student, Aishwarya's teacher. Where
Yes,
are you? Brinda? Yeah.
Yes. Aishwarya, you have very well covered the anatomy, also the functions and the physiology of the temporomandibular joint. As for now, there are no questions related to anatomy.
Okay.
So whatever it comes.
Okay. So I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
Please. Okay.
Okay.
There is a poll at the end of it. So
yes.
Please hold on to your seats. We've got a wonderful poll coming up.
Yes. Participants.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll go ahead with okay. Yes. Now I will come to temporomandibular joint disorders. Now, if we look at an asymptomatic individual who does not have any pain or dysfunction and has normal functioning masticatory system, if in any time in his lifetime, if that person has a trauma or some stress or some occlusal factors like some change in occlusion or some parafunctional habits, will all of them go ahead and develop TMD? No. The temporomandibular joint is very, very adaptive. It is the most forgiving joint of the body. It adapts to any occlusal change, stress, trauma, parafunction over a long period of time. So all individuals who have any of these factors in life will not go ahead and develop TMD. It's only when the adaptive capacity of the joint is, the force exceeds the adaptive capacity of the joint, or the trauma or the occlusal factors become chronic and exceed the adaptive capacity of the joint, that is when the person may develop a temporomandibular joint disorder. Now, what are the important points to consider when you think of treating a patient with a temporomandibular joint disorder? The first thing you need to understand is not all patients have the same site and the same source of the pain. Many patients come to you and tell you, I have pain in my temporomandibular joint, but that may not be the source of the pain. That may just be a site of the pain. The pain may be originating somewhere else, and it may be a muscle disorder which is radiating pain to the joint. So it's very important to understand which is the site and which is the source of the pain. If you treat the site of the pain, it is only giving symptomatic treatment, as you're not treating the cause. You must know what is the source of the pain and treat the source of the pain. Now, of course, I will take you through how you diagnose and how you come and identify the source of the pain in the following slides. The other important part is the mechanism of the pain, which means you must know what is the pathophysiology of the pain, means what are the etiological factors, what has caused this pain, what is the origin of the pain, why has the patient developed a temporomandibular disorder. It is very important to identify and know this before you go ahead with any treatment. Then the other important thing to consider is if the pain is primary or secondary. Now, most of the inflammatory pain, neuropathic pain, the myofascial pain and vascular pains are primary pain. Secondary pain is all the heterotrophic pain or the referred pains or any centrally mediated pains are normally secondary pain. The other thing to consider is the cause of the pain. Like I said, what is the etiology or the pathogenesis? So you must know site, source, mechanism, etiology, and if it's primary or secondary pain before you think of treating any patient with pain, be it orofacial or TMD. Now, classification of TMD. This is the latest classification given in 2014, and it is actually given very comprehensive. They are divided into muscle disorder, joint disorders, joint diseases, which means degenerative disorders of the joint, and others which are fractures and the developmental disorders of the joint. Now, it is not possible to cover all of them in detail in one webinar. So I will be covering the muscle disorders and the joint disorders, which include hypomobility and hypermobility in this webinar. I will also discuss or provide some material for further reading for PGs for joint diseases, which is degenerative disorders, and for developmental disorders. Fractures, I think we've covered in our last webinar very well. Okay, this is another classification which is also given by Dr. George Dimitroli in 2014. Now, this is an excellent classification for us surgeons, because unlike other classifications which tell you what is a joint disorder, what is a muscle disorder, this classification tells you if you diagnose it as this particular disorder, what is the treatment you have to give. So it's from the surgical point of view. He has divided into 5 categories. Category 1 being a normal joint where no surgery is required. Category 2 being there are minor changes in the joint, but most of the joint is functioning well and most of the structures can be salvaged. There you can do TMJ arthrocentesis or arthroscopic lavage if required. Category 3 is when there are moderate changes, but still most of the joint components are good, which is where some amount of degeneration has started. Category 3 is where some amount of degeneration starts. That is where you can do operative or therapeutic arthroscopy or arthroplasty, which is open joint. Then category 4 is severe changes, where there are severe degenerative changes in the joint, where discectomy or any other kind of condylectomy or condyle surgery may be required. And category 5 is where the joint is severely degenerated, where you may have to do resection and temporomandibular joint replacement. Now, before we come to treatment, the most important step is to get to a diagnosis. And it is extremely difficult to make a diagnosis for a temporomandibular joint disorder because it is multifactorial. It is very important. And most of the times they are always overlapping. Like a patient may have a muscle disorder and a joint disorder together. What is important is to identify whether it was primary muscle and secondary joint, or it was primary joint and secondary muscle, because you have to treat the primary source first to achieve any kind of good result. If you treat the secondary or just the site of the pain, it will not serve the purpose. Now, there are some keys which can be used to make a differential diagnosis. I will take you through each of them. The first being the history. So when a patient with TMJ pain walks into our clinic, I think the first appointment is the longest, because the history takes maximum amount of time. We have a 10-page history form starting from basics of, you ask extremely personal questions of what is the stress in your life, but you have to ask because all these are related to temporomandibular joint problems. So history taking, knowing what kind of pain, when did the pain start, what is the aggravating factor, what makes the patient feel that the pain reduces is extremely important. Should know if there are any joint sounds, clicking, popping that the patient feels that he has started hearing. And other history like general history, must know any medical treatment or past dental treatment or any trauma in the recent past or earlier in life, which the patient can recollect. Then coming to clinical examination. Now, clinical examination, like we do for all patients, has to be divided into inspection, palpation, and auscultation for TMJ patients also. Where in inspection, you must see that if there's any gross facial asymmetry, if there is any swelling, if there's any muscle hypertrophy, which means you must palpate and examine, now not in inspection, but in palpation, must palpate and examine all the muscles, facial muscles, including the neck muscles, because they can be a major source of pain when it is a muscle disorder. You must see the tone and the trigger points in the muscle. You also must assess for the range of motion, which means you must see for lateral motion, opening, deviation or deflection, and what is the maximum mouth opening. This you must examine when you see the patient for clinical examination of a temporomandibular joint disorder. Coming to palpation, again, you must palpate the joint and auscultate the joint for clicking, repetition. You must palpate the joint for any kind of tenderness. You must palpate all muscles, facial muscles and neck muscles, and sometimes shoulder muscles also for pain and tenderness and trigger points. Now, another important thing is end feel. It's called end feel. What end feel means is, suppose a patient can, now like in this picture, the patient can only open this much. But as a clinician, when I'm examining, I will try and open a little further and try and push not really push, but try and open against pain. If I feel that I am able to open against pain, that means it's a soft end feel. That means I'm able to, it is soft and I'm able to open further, which generally happens only with a muscle disorder. Because there is contraction of the muscle, there's tension in the muscle, there's pain and the patient is not opening. But when you try to open it, you can open it further. That's called a soft end feel. Whereas a hard end feel is when there is a dislocation. Even if you try to open, you cannot open beyond a certain point because the disc is dislocated and there is not full translation of the condyle. Now, the hard end feel generally occurs only in the translatory phase. Like I said, it does not occur in the initial mouth opening. Whereas the muscle disorder, the restriction in opening can be at any point in the mouth opening. It can be even in the rotational phase because the muscles contract and the patient can stop. The pain can be so much at even the initial opening that the patient may open less. Okay, then coming to restriction in the mouth opening, you must check if there's any restriction while opening. If there is a muscle disorder, like I said, the restriction can be in at any pathway of the opening. Means from, if the patient opens to 30 mm, the restriction can be at 15 mm or can be at 28 mm. There is no differentiation that the restriction can only be in the translatory phase when it's a muscle disorder. Whereas in an intracapsular disorder, the translatory phase is where there will be restriction of opening. So the patient will normally open for about 20-23 mm, where there is only primary rotation. That much opening the patient will have, and the restriction will be anywhere following that. Now, restriction in eccentric movements. When there is an intracapsular disorder, that is this dislocation without reduction, then the contralateral side eccentric movement will be limited, whereas the ipsilateral side movement will be normal. That means if you try to, if I have a dislocation on the left side, if I try to move my joint, my mandible to the right side, there will be restriction of movement. Whereas if I try to move it to the same side, that is the left side, there will be no restriction in movement. Then when it comes to muscle disorders, there is no restriction in eccentric movements. The restriction will only be in opening and closing. You must also check for mandibular interference. Now, when you tell the patient to open the mouth, any kind of mandibular interference or the path of opening tells you a lot about what kind of intracapsular disorder can it be. So if there is deviation, that is the mandible deviates while opening, but it again returns back to the midline, like the first picture. He deviates but comes back to the midline on maximal opening. Then there is a displacement with reduction. That means the mandible deviates and comes back to the midline when the disc is recaptured. When there is deflection, which means the mandible deflects to one side when opening, that means there is a disc displacement without reduction, and which means that the side to which the mandible is deflecting is the side where the disorder is. That means there is not full translation on that side of the condyle, and that is why when the other condyle is translating fully, it is deflecting to the side which is affected. Okay. Now coming to malocclusion. This is the greatest topic of debate in temporomandibular joint disorders, whether occlusion is the cause or the contributing factor, and what is the role of occlusion in TMD. So it is very important to understand that when a patient comes to you and tells you that my teeth don't meet together, my teeth don't meet like before, and I feel strange, my bite has changed. It is important to take history and know if the bite has changed because of some occlusal interference, like in this second picture, where the patient had a crown and that crown may be high, because of which there is an occlusal interference, and that is why there is a change in a malocclusion, or the bite has changed, which is when this occlusion becomes the main cause of the pain in the joint. Whereas if the patient comes to you and gives a history that I woke up in the morning and suddenly I feel that my teeth don't meet properly on one side, that is not malocclusion related temporomandibular joint problem. That is malocclusion caused by a temporomandibular joint problem, which means there might have been some amount of micro trauma or some amount of effusion or inflammation in the joint, which is causing a malocclusion on that side. So it is very important to understand a malocclusion causing TMD or a TMD which is causing a malocclusion, and only if you differentiate this can you really go ahead and treat the patient, because this patient will not get relief by giving occlusal treatment. Okay. Now coming to another test which is known as the Meham's test, which is very diagnostic, or it's a very good tool for diagnosis or differentiation between a muscle disorder and an intracapsular disorder. In that you use any kind of separator. It can be an ice cream stick or any separator between the canines or the premolars, and you tell the patient to tell you where does the patient feel pain. If the patient points to the contralateral joint, then that means it is an intracapsular disorder. If the patient says, I have pain on the ipsilateral side and points to the muscles on the ipsilateral side, or just points vaguely that I have pain on this side only, then it is primarily a muscle disorder. Because when a patient bites on a separator on one side, there is unloading of the joint on this side, but the muscles contract on the side where the patient is biting, and there is loading of the joint on the contralateral side. So if this loading of the joint causes pain, then it is an intra-articular problem on the contralateral side. Whereas if there is unloading of the joint here and the muscles are contracting and there's ipsilateral pain, then it is primarily a muscle disorder. Okay. Other diagnostic tool is diagnostic anesthetic blocks. Now, auriculotemporal nerve, mesenteric nerve, all these nerves are the primary nerve supply to the joint. So actually, if you go ahead and block the auriculotemporal nerve and the patient says, oh, I don't have pain anymore, then that is surely an intracapsular disorder, because just by blocking an auriculotemporal, giving an auriculotemporal nerve block, you cannot eliminate pain of a muscle disorder, because muscle disorder pain radiates from different muscles. Now, that was the conventional clinical picture and clinical examination that I spoke of. Like I said, in this talk, I will talk of conventional technique and then talk of some concepts which are newer and which are newer aids in diagnosis or that particular topic. So now coming to some newer diagnostic tools which are now commonly used. When I say newer, I don't mean newer. They are recently introduced, possibly. They have been used frequently in the developed countries. But now, moreover, a lot of people are taking training and it is becoming popular in our country. That is why it's a current concept. Now, there are various machines and gadgets which you can use to track and find out what is the reason of pain in the joint or the muscles. They help telling you the activity in the joint and the activity in the muscle. One of them is joint vibration analysis. Joint vibration analysis means that there is a receptor, like seen in the picture, which is placed on the joint, and the patient is asked to open, close, do lateral movements, and the various sounds that are produced are evaluated by the machine, and there is an entire classification which tells you, according to the sound and when it is produced, of what kind of joint disorder it can be. So this is a very good article to go back and read for PGs, which tells you about what is joint vibrational analysis. It will tell you exactly what are the joint sounds produced, what time in the opening or closing is the joint sound produced, and because of which you can come to a conclusion that what kind of intracapsular disorder it is, or and what kind of treatment is required. Another diagnostic tool is jaw tracking. Now, jaw tracking basically means that there are various, there's a phase bow and there is a impression tray. Now, what jaw tracking does is it does take an occlusal analysis of the teeth. Along with that, it also takes the analysis of the position of the condyle in the glenoid fossa or to the cranial in the glenoid fossa. So it also tells you if the position of the joint or the condyle is not in the right position, because of which there is a temporomandibular joint disorder. Now, this joint tracking helps in a way. All these machines, after you have done this analysis by the software, it can be connected to a cone beam CT or a CAD CAM, which can be used to make a splint which helps put the joint in the right position if the condyle is not seated in the right position, which this is not something that we use routinely in our practice. We are very old school when it comes to this. But articles and there's enough literature that says that there are splints which can be made, which can move the condyle to a more appropriate position if the condyle is not in the right position, which leads to TMD. And jaw tracking device along with a CAD-CAM device can be used to do that, where a splint can be fabricated like seen in this picture. Now, another diagnostic tool is electro-EMG. Now, EMG has been used widely even before. It's not really current, but it is one of the modalities that can be used for detecting any kind of muscle hyperactivity, which helps to tell you. Now, EMG can be done in two ways. Either it can be a 4-electrode EMG or it can be an 8-electrode EMG. 4-electrode EMG means only the facial muscles, that is both the temporalis and masseter. 8-electrode means you will also include the digastric and the sternocleidomastoid for EMG analysis. Now, what this does is it will tell you with these electrodes, it will tell you that if there's any hyperactivity in all these muscles, which in turn is causing the temporomandibular joint pain if it is a muscle disorder, or that is again going ahead and causing any temporomandibular joint intracapsular disorder after the muscle disorder. So EMG is also a very important diagnostic tool for diagnosing especially muscle disorder, because it does track the muscle activity and tone. Another important diagnostic tool is a T-scan machine. Actually, it is a digital occlusal analysis. This is what it's called. Digital occlusal analysis basically means that there's a machine which will record your occlusion while you are chewing or while you are biting. So the entire concept behind this is there is a school of thought which believes that when there is posterior occlusion and there's excessive force on the posterior teeth, that leads to load on the joint, which can lead to temporomandibular joint disorder. So that school of thought believes that the primary load and the primary force should be distributed to the anterior teeth or the canine guidance, and that is where the posterior teeth are disoccluded, and that is why the load on the joint is less. So what this machine does is it will tell you when a person is closing, which is the first point of contact, that is the disclusion time reduction. So that the first point of contact is where the theory says you are supposed to make a splint. So again, once you know which is the first point of contact or the disclusion time, then at that particular point you go ahead and fabricate a splint, and that is a splint or a neuromuscular splint orthotics that they make to improve the occlusal equilibrium. Now, those were all the diagnostic tools along with the clinical examination which you can use to make a diagnosis. Now, another important part is the imaging. Now, when it comes to imaging, every patient that walks into our clinic, you do not go ahead and do an MRI or a CT scan. Every temporomandibular joint patient does not require it. You only require a routine panoramic image to just see that there is no degeneration or any obvious degenerative changes in the temporomandibular joint. In the beginning, you only require that image. Once you've come to a clinical diagnosis, once you've done all the other steps, you can then go ahead and decide. Once you suspect whether it's a muscle disorder or an intracapsular disorder, then you can go ahead and decide whether you want to do a CT scan or an MRI. When you want to see the disc or the soft tissue portion of the joint, an MRI is the standard, gold standard for it. It cannot be done with any other imaging. When you want to see only the osseous structures, then you can do a CBCT or a CT. Now, the latest diagnostic tool is CMJ arthroscopy, because it is diagnostic. You are putting an arthroscope into the joint and looking into the joint. So nothing can give you more information than an arthroscopy. So that is one of the major diagnostic advances. Now coming to, I'll just speak a little 2 slides on the MRI, because a lot of PGs don't understand how to read an MRI. There are 2 types of MRIs, that is a T1 and a T2 MRI. Now T1 MRI is basically more of fat sensitive, whereas a T2 MRI is more of fluid sensitive. Now when you take a T1 MRI, I hope you are able to appreciate, this is the closed mouth position where you can see the condyle is seated behind. This is the disc and this is the retrodiscal portion. This is an open mouth position where you can see this is the condyle. This radio opaque portion that you see is the condyle, is the disc, and this is the condyle. This black portion is the cortex that you see in an MRI. These are the muscles. This is the glenoid fossa, and this is the posterior attachment. Whereas in a T2 MRI, you can see that there will be some amount of fluid uptake. So if you will see some amount of synovial fluid, or if there's an effusion, you will see a white color, which I'll show you in the X-ray ahead. Now in this, the diagnosis, if you see this MRI, is that there is a anterior disc displacement with reduction, which means in the closed mouth position, the disc was ahead, whereas when in the open mouth position, it is in the above the condyle at the 11 o'clock position. Now this is another MRI where this is again the closed mouth position where you can see the disc is anteriorly displaced. This is the open mouth position. Again, the disc is anteriorly displaced. It is not recaptured in the open mouth position. And this is a T2 image where there is more fluid sensitive. So you can see some amount of effusion in the joint, which is this white portion. So this is an anteriorly displaced disc without reduction and some amount of joint effusion. So summarizing it, when we look at a patient, the patient can have a muscle disorder alone, can have an intracapsular disorder alone, can have a primary intracapsular disorder, which is because of some micro trauma or macro trauma to the joint, and which also has some amount of muscle component, which is secondary, or can have a primary muscle disorder with secondary intracapsular disorder. So the muscle disorder was the first thing that started, which has now led to untreated and led to intracapsular disorder. Again, so I've spoken of clinical features, diagnosis, and imaging. We can take a break and some questions if there are any. These are again some of the most common questions for PGs: etiology, pathophysiology, and classification of TMD, diagnostic tools for TMD, pathophysiology of disc displacements of the temporomandibular joint, masticatory muscle myalgias or extracapsular disorders, and TMJ imaging.
Yes, Aishwarya.
Vrinda ma'am, yeah.
We will
Okay.
go for discussion. One question related to the pain. Is referred pain is always a secondary pain?
It is not necessary, it is always, but most of the times it's secondary pain because it is referred to another area. So that is not primarily the source of the pain, that is the site of the pain. So it is most of the times referred pain is the secondary pain.
Yes. One question related to the palpation. Can you tell us how to palpate temporomandibular joint?
Okay. So basically when you palpate, there is bimanual palpation where either you will palpate from outside where you use your fingers, tell the patient to open and close and you will palpate the joint, or you will put one finger inside the ear and the other will be on the joint where you will tell the patient to open and close. So bimanual palpation can be done or auscultation can be done for sounds. Now palpation and auscultation both are for sounds or crepitation. If there is a crepitus, that can be heard better. Sometimes the crepitus is or clicking is as loud that the patient will tell you, I have a click or I have a crepitus, or you can hear it when the patient opens and closes without palpation itself. But sometimes the click or the crepitus is not loud enough and you have to palpate and check whether the patient has a click. So while you are palpating and you tell the patient to open and close, you must evaluate where the click happens, at what amount of opening is the click, or at what, when the patient is closing, at what stage of closing is the click.
Yeah, one question related to clicking. Nidhi wants to know if there is a contralateral eccentric movement, clicking, that is clicking on contralateral eccentric movement, it denotes what? Which part of condyle is getting involved in that?
Clicking on contralateral eccentric movement.
Yes.
So actually clicking does not really happen on eccentric movement. See, basically when you try to do any kind of eccentric movement, there is some amount of rotation and a little translation that happens. So basically the clicking is because of the and now again that most of the times the clicking will be on the side to which the eccentric movement is. So if there is a disc displacement without reduction, then there will be no click because there is no snapping back and forward of the disc. All this happens only when there is a disc displacement with reduction, where the disc is anteriorly displaced, and when you do any kind of movement or opening, the disc gets recaptured, because of which you hear the click.
Yes, rightly said. One question from Urvashi. Can we rely on Mahan's test always? And the other question
yes ma'am. no, you can't rely on Mahan's test always. It is not, there is no test that you can solely rely on when you diagnose a temporomandibular joint disorder. It is a combination of all the things that you do that you get to a diagnosis. Like I said, you cannot do one thing and say, yes, this is a definite diagnosis when it comes to TMD, because it's so multifactorial that all the steps of diagnosis that I told you, Mahan's test will be a contributing factor to that to tell you whether it's primary muscle or intracapsular, but all the other steps also have to be checked, including imaging. Only then can you come to a definite diagnosis.
Yes, Aishwarya, totally agreed. The other question related to clicking is, what does clicking
Yes,
and
ma'am.
crepitus indicates in diagnosis?
Okay. So clicking basically, like I said, is when the disc is out of position. So basically, if the disc is anteriorly displaced and the person is trying to open the mouth, and there is a disc displacement with reduction. With reduction means your body, if something is abnormal, your body itself will try to rectify it. So that time, while the condyle is in function, the disc will come back to its normal position. So basically, when the disc is displaced ahead, the condyle is articulating mostly on the posterior part of the disc, which is thicker, and the intermediate zone is thinner. So when you snap from a broader portion to a thinner portion is where you'll hear the click, because it has been recaptured to the actual position where it's supposed to be. That is the opening click. When there is a closing click, that means that after the entire motion of opening, when you try to close the mouth, again the disc slips back to the anterior position. That is clicking. Now that happens only when there is a disc displacement with reduction. Like I said, without reduction, there is no reduction of the disc, and the disc is in a stationary position throughout the movement. So there is no clicking heard in without reduction. Now coming to crepitus. Crepitus means that there is, now the disc acts as a shock absorber or a separator between the two articulating surfaces, that is the condyle and the glenoid fossa. If there is some thinning of the disc or perforation in the disc, or the disc is so anteriorly displaced or degenerated that the two bony surfaces rub against each other, that is known as crepitation. So when there is crepitation, you must know that that is a little advanced stage of disease than clicking. Clicking can happen even in primary stages of temporomandibular joint disorder.
Yes. Shruti wants to know different type of sounds on auscultation and its clinical relevance.
That is again the same thing, like I spoke. Clicking and crepitation is what you primarily hear. Now that again you have to differentiate when you into opening click, closing click, and what is the crepitation and what is the mouth opening before you hear that crepitation.
One question related to how to discern tooth and TMJ pain.
Okay, so that is an entire topic on itself, but odontogenic pain you have to differentiate from temporomandibular joint pain. Odontogenic pain is very easy to diagnose. You will always find an odontogenic source. Like I said, again, that comes to play. You have to know what is the source of the pain. Again, an odontogenic pain can cause some facial pain, but that will be the site of the pain. It will not be the source of the pain. So it is important to differentiate that there is no odontogenic cause to that pain before you say it is orofacial pain or temporomandibular joint pain.
Yes. One question coming from Dr. Jay Kulkarni is related to the question you answered previously regarding click and disc displacement. Does it mean that when there is click, it is disc displacement with reduction? And once it becomes without reduction, there won't be any click.
Most of the times there is no click when there is a disc displacement without reduction, because there is no recapturing of the disc and the disc remains ahead. And also there is limited mouth opening, because the disc actually obstructs the opening or the complete translation of the condyle. Whereas when there is a disc displacement with reduction, the click means that the disc is moving back to the right position. And if there is a closing click, it means that it is again slipping back to the anterior position.
Okay. One question related to imaging. If OPG clearly shows bony changes in the condylar head, and on clinical evaluation there is a hint of TMD, which imaging to go for next? Can CTB
If
help?
OPG, yeah, if OPG shows osseous changes or changes in the condylar head and your clinical examination rules out any disc related problems and you feel that it is more of degenerative disease and you want to see the osseous portion of the joint, then a CBCT or a CT would be sufficient. But if you feel after clinical examination that you want to see the disc position also, then that can only be done with an MRI.
Other question, when does TMJ pain gets referred? What does crepitus indicate? Does clicking always precedes crepitus? This is one part of
Not
question.
necessary.
Not necessary. Yes.
Okay.
The other part is
Okay.
what swelling in the region of TMJ or muscle swelling indicates.
Okay. Now, sorry, what was the first part of the question? So crepitus may not always be, there may not always be clicking when there is before crepitus. It can quite be possible that the joint has adapted for the longest time. So the patient had no symptom like a clicking, but when there is degeneration of the disc or there's a perforation of the disc or later on after a lot of wear and tear in the joint, there is tear in the disc that can lead to a crepitus. So it's not necessary every patient goes from clicking to crepitus. Some patients have clicking all their life, have no crepitus ever.
The other part is what does the swelling in TMJ or muscle swelling indicates?
So swelling in the joint can be a lot of things. You have to have, if there is an obvious swelling in the temporomandibular joint area, you have to rule out a lot of things. It may not necessarily be only TMD. It can be a tumor in that area. It can be any kind of degenerative change which has caused that swelling. So imaging plays an important role if there is a swelling. Secondly, in a muscle, if there is a swelling, that can be a hypertrophy of the muscle, which you must evaluate for. And that in that, you can always use an EMG or all these newer diagnostic tools, which will help find out the muscle activity and the reason of the swelling.
Yes. So far now, these are the questions. We can proceed.
Okay.
Aishwarya, can I get in? Can I weigh in?
Yes, please.
Yeah. See, you were talking about T-scan. Okay. Now,
yes,
how effective would T-scan be if there is some problem with the disc? You know, we are talking about occlusal balancing. If there is some discal issue, then would that solve it?
So, frankly, like I said, I am not a person who really uses T-scan for all these things. I'm very conventional in this, but I have a lot of people and friends who do T-scan and use T-scan and occlusal analysis a lot. And they claim that with occlusal equilibrium or changing the occlusion, there can be a change in the disc position, which frankly to me, I feel there can never be a change in the disc position if it is chronic disc displacement. It can only be if there is an acute disc displacement, like you can do in a conventional way. You can try it with splints. So any kind of occlusal rehabilitation, if it has to have an effect on the disc, even if it does, it has to be an acute disc displacement. In a chronic case, I think the only thing that you do, be it a conventional method or using any of the T-scan or any occlusal rehabilitation or splints, is to actually try and form a pseudo disc or relieve the pain and the symptom of the patient. You really cannot get back the disc to the normal position with any of these methods unless you go ahead and pull back the disc and tie it.
Okay. And another question from my resident, Dr. Shruti. She wants to know if, not everywhere you may have a facility of MRI, right? So in which case, what other option do you have? Maybe a CT is available, but then what a CT?
Okay.
And I will need to, maybe I'll add to the discussion of this. You know, even if you have an MRI, you need to have
Yes, sir.
somebody, a radiologist who's very tuned
Yes.
to the discal,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
It is
sir.
not that you get
Yes,
an
sir.
MRI because they've not seen many cases. I mean, I'm not
Yes.
blaming
Yes,
anybody.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So, like I said, that is the reason why I put those MRI slides, because it is very, I always feel MRI reporting is very exaggerated. It is more than what is actually happening in the joint, because every small little change they over report. So there's a lot of over reporting of the MRI reporting. So it is very important to actually be able to read the MRI yourself. So most of the time we don't even read the report. You must be able to read the slices or the sections that are given in the MRI yourself and make your own diagnosis if there is really a disc displacement or any other changes in the joint. If an MRI is not really available and you are actually suspecting a disc displacement, then your clinical examination does give you a lot of clue to that. So you can really treat it based on your clinical examination. If not, then like I said, the other way is to arthroscopically go ahead and check if there is a disc displacement.
I guess that holds true for the knee joint as well, over reporting.
Yeah. So Yashaswini has just put a message saying that TMJ MRI is even hard to get done. So that speaks
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
the issue.
Yes.
Okay, I think we can move ahead.
Okay. 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 So I'll go ahead. Okay, now that brings us to management of TMD. Now, when we are talking of management, let us first talk of what is the primary goal when we are talking of management of temporomandibular joint disorders. The primary goal, like I said, when there is wear and tear in the joint, you can never get that joint back to what it was. None of us will have the joint which we had when we were 16. And we have to learn to have an asymptomatic joint, which means a functional joint with no problem. So the only goal of treatment is painless normalization of mandibular function, not to normalize the joint anatomy. So there are various modalities of management. The primary modality being conservative management. When conservative fails, you go to semi-conservative management. And when both conservative and semi-conservative fail, you go to surgical management. TMJ, we tell all our patients, TMJ is not like you walk into a doctor's clinic and you get treated and you leave. It is not. That patient is yours for life. So you have to go, it's like a ladder. You have to go from the first to the second to the third step. No patient can, we have a lot of patients who come to us and say, no, doctor, just do the surgical part, just do the semi-surgical, just do the scopy and finish it off. But that is not how it is. Every patient that walks into your clinic for temporomandibular joint disorder deserves conservative management first, and only failed conservative management patients deserve semi-conservative or surgical management, because 90% of the patients improve with conservative management if the right modalities are done the right way. If you have made the right diagnosis and the right treatment, 90% of the patients will improve with conservative management, and only 10% will require semi-surgical or surgical management. So coming to conservative management, firstly, we have to differentiate between muscle disorder and intracapsular disorder. So first I'll talk of muscle disorders. When there is a muscle disorder, the various modalities that can be applied for conservative management is PSR is self-regulation. So there are a lot of things you tell the patient. I will come to each point. Yeah. So the first thing you tell the patient is, if the patient has any parafunctional habit or has a habit of clenching or grinding, the first thing you tell the patient is lips together, teeth apart when the patient is at rest. There is no way that you go ahead and give treatment to the patient and the patient continues to have a parafunctional habit, that your treatment will be successful in the long run. So that is parafunctional habit awareness. And you tell the patient, when the patient is at rest, the lips should be together and teeth apart. If there is a diet modification required, the patient has a habit of eating extremely hard food, then you might need to do a diet modification for that particular period of treatment at least. Pharmacotherapy, various agents for pain relief, muscle relaxation, all those can be used as adjuvants to the primary treatment that you do, because actually pharmacotherapy is only giving symptomatic treatment. So you have to find out what is the cause and source of the pain and treat that, and pharmacotherapy can be adjuvant to that. Okay. Now there are various other therapies, biobehavioral therapy, which means there is habit reversal, lifestyle counseling, stress management, which all of us require, and everybody is stressed. So stress is a major contributing factor to TMD. If not, it may not be the primary factor of cause of TMD, but it is definitely an aggravating factor. So there are various biobehavioral therapy and counseling, which is very well explained in these two articles for PGs to refer, where you can go and read how biobehavioral therapy is done. Now coming to physical therapy, there are various modalities: exercise, mobilization of the joint, posture training, TENS, ultrasound, acupuncture, laser, trigger point injections. These articles enumerate that well, though I'll take you through most of the points. So coming to physical therapy, exercise. So there are 3 types of exercises that you can give your patient depending on what is the requirement of the patient. So the first one being stretching or relaxation exercises, which are called isotonic exercise. Isotonic exercise means it's a passive exercise, which means which is the most common isotonic exercise that we give our patients, which all of us I'm sure must be giving, is to tell our patients to touch the lingual portion of the upper teeth with the tongue and open and close. So those are stretching and relaxation exercises, which are isotonic and passive. Now, there are other coordination exercises where again you tell the patient, like in this picture you can see, you tell the patient to hold the joint, open and close. You tell the patient to sit in front of the mirror, open and close, so that you open in a straight line and don't deviate or deflect. Of course, deflect is not something that you can control, but deviate at least. Strengthening exercises are the third type of exercises, which are isometric exercises. Now, isometric exercises means that you are strengthening that particular muscle by working that muscle against resistance. Means if, like in this picture, if I am trying to strengthen this muscle, I'm going to apply counter pressure from this side and then try to work that muscle, which helps in strengthening of that muscle. Okay. Now, there are various other physical modalities like TENS and ultrasound. Now, TENS, transcutaneous electric nerve stimulation, has been used for a long time for relieving pain in temporomandibular joint disorder. Now, the primary goal of these therapies is, though the method of doing it is different, ultrasound has 16,000 vibrations are the vibrations that you're supposed to give with an ultrasound machine. Whereas with a TENS, it will differ. You place electrodes and you will give about 10 to 30 milliamperes of current, which is given over 40 to 150 hertz of frequency. Now that is the method of doing it is different. The machine is different. But the primary goal of these therapies is, when it comes to muscles, is to reduce the tension in the muscle, relax the muscle, reduce the pain in the joint, reduce the stiffness in the joint, improve the mobility of the joint, improve the blood supply to the joint and the muscles, and the oxygen supply, which helps in better healing and relieving the pain of the muscle or the joint. So the primary goal of these therapies is the same, though the method of doing it varies. Same comes with acupuncture. Now, acupuncture at the trigger points when there is a muscle disorder is a very known therapy for, or dry needling also. Dry needling also in muscle disorders, where there is acupuncture and dry needling done at the trigger points, which are extremely painful, help in relieving pain in that area and also relieving tension in the trigger points. Coming to laser, low-level laser therapy has been used since ages for orofacial pain management. So does it apply to temporomandibular joint disorders also. Again, low-level laser therapy, which means about 630 to 1300 nanometers of a diode laser is used. and that laser wavelength is passed depending on the frequency, and the duration depends on the pain quotient of the patient and how many cycles are required. It varies from patient to patient. But again, with laser, the primary goal that you achieve is similar to what you achieve with TENS and ultrasound. Those are the primary goals when you do any of these physical therapy modalities. Now coming to trigger point injections. Now trigger point injections play a very important role when it comes to muscle disorders primarily, because some patients have such painful trigger points in their muscles. So it's very important that you palpate the muscles properly in your clinical examination, know exactly where are the trigger points, and if by other conservative modalities, the muscle pain is not getting relieved, then you may need to go ahead and give trigger point injections in those particular trigger points of those muscles to relieve pain in that area. Now, the primary mechanism of action is that when there is a trigger point and you inject a local, now the two modalities of doing trigger point injections is you can inject a long-acting local anesthetic solution, which is like bupivacaine, or you can inject Botox. Now, there are also cases where you can inject both bupivacaine and Botox together, where you dilute the Botox with bupivacaine instead of saline, which gives a synergistic effect. Now, this decision is to be taken by your clinical evaluation and diagnosis. Whether the patient has only pain, then only possibly a trigger point injection with a local anesthetic solution would do. But if the patient has pain and also hyperactivity of the muscle, then you may have to combine it with Botox or give Botox primarily for treatment of that kind of pain and hyperactivity of the muscle. Now, when it comes to Botox, a lot of people ask, what is the amount of Botox you can inject into muscles? Now, that varies from muscle to muscle. It varies from patient to patient. It also varies on the number of trigger points that are there in that particular muscle. So when you must not inject anything more than 400 units of Botox at one shot in any patient. It should always be lower than that. And you should not inject more than 150 units of Botox in a single muscle. In smaller muscles, the unit of Botox will be lesser. In bigger muscles like the sternocleidomastoid or the neck muscles like or the shoulder muscles like trapezius, of course, they are bigger muscles. They may have more trigger points, so the amount of Botox will be more. When it comes to facial muscles like masseter or temporalis, anywhere between 30 to 50 units of Botox is what is effective. Yeah. Now I come to appliance therapy. Now, what are the appliances that you use? The most common questions are whether you should use a hard appliance or a soft appliance. You should use a partial coverage appliance or a full coverage appliance. Now, the answer to that is what we use is a combination of a hard and soft appliance, which means the tooth portion of the appliance, which is occluding with the tooth, is soft so that there's no damage to the teeth. And the outer portion of the appliance is hard. That is the most ideal appliance because it does not wear off also soon and it does not damage the teeth. Now coming to partial coverage or full coverage, there is no role of partial coverage appliances according to me. Frankly, full coverage appliances play the most important role in relieving TMJ pain. And I think partial coverage appliances are very rarely used now. Now the most, I'll come to that. What is the uses of the appliance? Now before we go to appliance therapy, there's an article that I really want PGs to read. In this article, they have calculated the force ratio on the joint when the teeth are occluding. So when maximum force is distributed in the posterior teeth or the molars, the amount of force in the joint is 15 to 25%. Whereas if there is zero force in the posteriors and maximum force is
Just
in the
excuse me,
anterior,
Aishwarya. Just 1 second.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I request all the participants to put their mics off. Hello, everyone.
I'm not going to both important class চলতেছে
Abhilasha, can you mute them?
All the participants, please mute your mics.
I think someone had just logged in and left the things with mic on. We need to mute that.
Okay.
Yes,
Done.
proceed, Aishwarya.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So when there is no distribution or no contact in the posteriors, and there's 35 to 40% of the load is distributed in the anteriors, then the load on the joint increases. But when there is centric relation, which means that there is maximum intercuspation and good intercuspation of the teeth, then 20% reduction of the force is seen on the joint. So it is very important to know that you must make a splint in the most musculoskeletal position when it comes to appliance therapy. Now, what do I mean by musculoskeletal stable position? What musculoskeletal stable position means, not everybody normally is in the most musculoskeletal stable position. The musculoskeletal stable position is when the muscles are absolutely at rest and the condyle is resting in the most superior and posterior portion in the glenoid fossa. Now, normally, none of us may always, our musculoskeletal stable position and our normal bite or the normal occluding position may not match. So before you make a splint, you must make sure that you manually put the patient in a musculoskeletal stable position, which means you, like in the picture, you have to stand behind, hold the mandible, and get the patient to occlude to the first contact that the patient makes. The first contact that the patient makes is the most musculoskeletal stable position, and the splint must be prepared in that position in order to be of any use in treatment of TMD. Now, the various appliances that are there are various appliances according to Okeson, Dawson, there are various types of appliances. Let's primarily divide them into permissive splints and directive splints. Now, what are permissive splints? Are all the stabilizing appliances. Directive splints are all the ones where we give anterior positioning appliances, all those which direct the mandible in a different position. Now, when it comes to a stabilizing appliance, it's very important to know what is the function of a stabilizer. Now, a lot of people call it a deprogramming splint. I personally, I don't believe, and literature also supports that there is nothing known as deprogramming the muscles. The muscles can never be deprogrammed. You can only stabilize them and relax them. So I don't really call it the deprogramming splint. It is a stabilizing appliance, which means it stabilizes the joint position. It reduces the tension in the muscle. It relaxes the muscle. It redistributes the occlusal forces, and because of which there is reduction in pain. Okay. That is what the stabilizing appliance does. Now, if you look at these pictures, this is the first bite of the patient, in the normal bite that the patient had, the first picture. The second picture is when we took a musculoskeletal position and developed an anterior position of the anterior bite of the patient, which is the most musculoskeletal position, which means the first contact by manually putting the mandible in the musculoskeletal position. Then the splint is adjusted and trimmed and added to suit that particular position. So when the patient finally will wear this splint, it will be in the most musculoskeletal position. That is how it is a stabilizing appliance. The other appliances that are available are anterior repositioning appliance, anterior biplane, and posterior biplane. I will tell the advantages and disadvantages of each. The anterior repositioning appliance is used, like I said, when you want to anteriorly position the mandible for theoretically for recapturing the disc. It is generally done in disc displacement. But like I said, in acute disc displacement, you can still try to recapture it by an anterior repositioning appliance. In most of the chronic cases, you are only treating the symptom, which is pain, by causing the formation of a pseudodisc with this appliance. The other appliance is the anterior biplane. Now, the anterior biplane was mostly used because, like I said, there's a school of thought which believe that if the posterior disoccludes, then the force on the joint is less. So they gave an anterior positioning appliance where the posteriors did not meet, which caused in the long run supraeruption of the posteriors, and it is no longer that commonly used. Similarly, the posterior biplane was used to improve the vertical dimension. where only posteriorly the teeth occlude, and also this posterior portion is This posterior portion is connected by a bar in the center. There are only the appliance is only on the posterior teeth, and there's a bar in the between connecting the two appliances on both sides, which also was used for improving the horizontal relationship of the mandible. Now, again, this is not very commonly used anymore because again it causes supra-eruption of the anterior teeth, and there is malocclusion which cannot be a stable occlusion later. So the most commonly used appliances actually are the stabilizing appliance and the anterior positioning appliance now. Now, when it comes to appliance therapy, you must expect improvement if you have done the right diagnosis. It is the right appliance to be given in that patient. There should be some amount of improvement in 2 to 3 weeks. If not, that means you have not actually known what is the actual cause of that pain and you have made a misdiagnosis. Now let's come to what an appliance can do and what it cannot do. What it can do is decrease the loading in the joint. It can reduce the muscle activity and relax the muscles. It can reduce the symptoms or the pain, and it can protect the teeth. What it cannot do is it cannot retrain the muscles. There is nothing known as an appliance retraining muscles. This cannot recapture a disc. It cannot eliminate parafunction. It really cannot eliminate parafunction. It can be an adjuvant to help in parafunction. It cannot establish any proper vertical dimension. With an appliance, that is not possible. You need more methods to actually establish a vertical dimension. You cannot reprogram muscles. Like I said, you cannot retrain or reprogram. You can only relax the muscles. Now so that was the conventional part of appliance therapy. There is some advances. This is a quick splint. Now, what is a quick splint? A quick splint means an elastomeric impression is taken, and that impression is used as a splint especially in cases where there is heavy bruxism or heavy chewing in a patient, and you want to give that patient a splint. And if you're not fabricating the final splint in your clinic, and it's going to take some time for that splint to go to the lab and get fabricated, then this is something that you can do in the clinic. You get these trays and you just need an elastomeric impression material, and that becomes the temporary splint till you make the final splint for the patient. Now coming to another recent advance in conservative management. This, like I said, there is an entire concept of neuromuscular orthotic, neuromuscular treatment of management of temporomandibular joint disorders. Now, what that primarily means is it has two parts. There is reduction neuromuscular neuromuscular treatment, and there is addition neuromuscular. So reduction NMD and addition NMD are the two parts of it. Now, these are two articles which tell about both the parts. I'll just tell about each in brief. When it comes to addition NMD, which is this, it is again using machines like jaw tracker or joint vibration analysis and finding out what is the hyperactivity in the muscle or what is the cause of the pain in the joint, and seeing that what is the occlusal discrepancy which is causing this, and adding a splint or adding material to remove that occlusal discrepancy. So that is addition. You're adding something into the occlusion. That is why it's called addition NMD. Whereas in reduction NMD, it is disocclusion time reduction. Like I've spoken about it before, where you take the occlusal model and you know that these are the high areas in the occlusion, and you reduce it till there is till the first point of disocclusion. So you have to make a splint in the you have to know the disocclusion time and make the splint in that particular position so that there is relaxation of the muscles and relieving of pain in the muscles. That is about disocclusion time reduction. Disocclusion time reduction is where T-scans are used for occlusal analysis and digital analysis. Then that is transferred to a CAD-CAM image, and a splint is made in a new position where the condyle is in a more suitable position than what it is. so that the muscles are also relaxed and the joint is in the most stable position. That is the concept behind that. That is a fellow oral surgeon who is not really getting treatment done, but is teaching neuromuscular. Yeah. So let me have a little discussion on a small case report. So if I would be happy if it's a little interactive and you can reply on chat to the questions that I asked during the case discussion. So this is a 56-year-old male patient, came to us with difficulty to open mouth since 4 months, pain on opening, no clicking or joint sounds, pain more on mastication, yawning, chewing hard food, no pain while eccentric movements, and history of a dental extraction that was done some time back. Now, the mouth opening was about 14 mm and he had a soft end feel, which means during clinical examination, I could open a little more than what he was opening to about 20 mm. He had no joint sounds, pain on palpation of the masseter and the temporalis muscles, and there were trigger points on the right side on both muscles. Pain on ipsilateral side when clenched on separator. That is the Mahan's test. So when I did the Mahan's test for the patient had pain on the ipsilateral side, not the contralateral side. No pain on eccentric or lateral movements, and trigger points were palpable in the masseter and the temporalis. So what investigations would you go ahead and do for such a patient? You can reply on the chat box if possible. Would you do a OPG? Would you do a CT? Would you do an MRI? Would you do EMG with digital occlusal analysis? What is the line of what is the investigation and line of treatment that you would decide? Thinking of the clinical features and the history and the clinical examination, it goes more towards a muscle disorder than a intracapsular disorder. So all you require is a plain panoramic image to see that there is no degenerative change in the osseous part of the joint. But the patient had been to some other doctor before, so the patient came with an OPG and an MRI to us. So we had the liberty of seeing both, but both are normal. So what is the possible?
Can I interrupt you for a while?
Yes.
Since
Please.
you are speaking about OPG, there is one interesting question coming from Dr. Jay Kulkarni, who wants to know that OPG normally we take by protruding the mandible. So if we are suspecting any changes in TMJ, do we need any changes in this normal OPD, that is patient occlusion or something like that? Okay. And what should we exactly look for changes in joint space?
Okay. So, ma'am, basically OPG is just to see it's just a primary X-ray to see the cortical portion of the condyle, the density of bone in the condyle, if there are any osseous changes in the condyle or the glenoid fossa, and to see if there is good enough joint space or reduced joint space. This is all that you can primarily see in an OPG. Now, the position in which an OPG is taken does not really matter, because you are not looking at any disc or any soft tissue portion of the joint in the OPG. All you're going to see is just the bony portion of the OPG, which you will see, bony portion of the joint, which you will see in any position that you take the OPG.
Yes.
Ma'am, I'll go ahead.
Please. Yes.
Okay. So what can be the possible diagnosis depending on the imaging and the clinical evaluation that we have done? It is more likely to be a muscle disorder than an intracapsular disorder. Now, why a muscle disorder? The reason why the patient had limited opening was the pain constraint. It is also known as protective co-contraction, which means that the muscles contract, they cause pain. Because of the increased strain and stretch in the muscles themselves contract to not cause further damage to the muscles, because of which the patient has a lot of pain, and beyond which the patient does not open. That is why the patient has limited opening. It is not because there is some intracapsular problem. It is primarily a muscle disorder. Now, how would you go ahead and treat? Would you do conservative management, arthroscopy, arthrocentesis, that is minimally invasive management, or yes, sir.
Aishwarya, what you said is correct. I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt. Urvashi and Richa also agree with you that the diagnosis is muscle pain on the right side. And Urvashi says that is there disc displacement without reduction on the contralateral side? Is it?
No.
No.
So I showed the MRI. There is no disc displacement in the
Okay.
MRI. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. So what would you like to do for conservative management or arthroscopic or arthrocentesis or surgical management, primarily for a muscle disorder or for any treatment, even if it's an intracapsular disorder, you have to start with conservative management. But this patient primarily requires only conservative management. So we went ahead, made a musculoskeletal stable position splint, that is a stabilizing splint for the patient. And the patient also, in spite of giving the splint, did have a lot of trigger points which were extremely painful in the masseter and the temporalis, which we had to go ahead and inject with local anesthetic solution. We did not use Botox because there was no hyperactivity of the muscle, and also the number of trigger points and the pain portion was not so bad to go ahead and reduce the tonicity of the muscle with Botox. So that is pre-op and post-op. Now coming to intracapsular disorders. So intracapsular disorders basically can be disc displacement. Now most common disc displacement is anterior. That is because of the pull of the lateral pterygoid muscle. The uncommon disc displacements are also posterior, which is very uncommon, and lateral and medial. Now lateral medial is generally when the collateral ligaments lose their laxity on the disc. That is when there can be a lateral or medial disc displacement. Now, Wilkie's classification, I will not discuss in detail. I'm sure all of you all have, even PGs are very well versed with it. There are 5 stages. It is very important to know this classification before you go ahead to treat any intracapsular disorder, be it disc displacement without reduction or with reduction. Now, when you come to disc displacement with reduction, like I said, the patient may give a history of clicking, which can be long-standing clicking, but it's not necessary that the patient had pain before. The patient may have developed pain with clicking only much later. It might have started with a click which progressed to a painful click. There can be occasional locking. Some patients do come to you and say that sometimes my jaw gets locked, but it's very occasional and I can put it back, I can reduce it myself, and there is pain. Clinically, when you examine, there will be pain or limited jaw opening. There can be limited jaw opening. Most of the times, if the disc is recaptured, the opening is not very limited. Protruded portion of the position of the mouth can eliminate the catching sensation. So if you tell the patient to protrude the mandible and open and close, you will not hear the click. And there can be a opening click or an opening click and reciprocal click. Like you see in the picture, you can actually see that it snaps ahead. That will be the first click. And when it snaps back, so yeah, it snaps back, that's the first click. And the closing click is when it snaps ahead again. Now, when it comes to treatment of disc displacement with reduction, like I said, always start with conservative management. You try an appliance, you try conservative modalities. If there is no change, then you go to a anterior positioning appliance. If the patient improves or there's decrease in symptoms, then you can shift back to the stabilizing appliance, which will stabilize that particular position of the joint. Then if the symptoms reduce, then well and fine, you can continue the stabilizing appliance till there are symptoms. If the symptoms still persist, then you have to think of going ahead and doing some minimally invasive procedures like arthroscopy or arthrocentesis. Now, suppose after appliance therapy, the second portion is when there is some decrease in the symptoms, then you continue the stabilizing appliance and reevaluate. Suppose with the stabilizing appliance itself, patient responds and there's reduce in symptoms, you can continue with the same appliance, reevaluate again. Again, if the patient doesn't improve and you have done appliance therapy for a while and there's no improvement further, then you will have to go ahead and do semi-surgical management. So again, let's just discuss one case quickly. This patient reported to us with 22 mm mouth opening and first click at 22 mm. The max opening was 34 mm with pain. The on clinical examination, if you examine, it was a hard end field. Like you cannot open further than what she was already opening. pain and clicking of the right joint, no pain on palpation of any muscle in the face, head or neck region. When you place the separator on the left side, patient exactly complained of pain on the contralateral side or the right joint, and there was no pain on the ipsilateral side. Pain on eccentric or lateral movements to the left side, and restricted lateral movement on the left side. Okay. So what investigations? Now, when we look at this case, if we are really clinically suspecting this displacement, then we must go in for an MRI before we conclude that the patient requires minimally invasive treatment or conservative management. So you must go in and check the disc position. So we go in for an MRI. So this is the closed mouth and open mouth MRI. In the closed mouth, you can see the disc is anteriorly displaced. And in the open mouth, you can see that it is almost well recaptured. So that is a anterior disc displacement with reduction of the right temporomandibular joint. Now, how would you treat it? So this patient, we went ahead and gave an anterior repositioning splint. She did improve after some time after anterior repositioning splint. And after the anterior repositioning splint, we shifted her into a stabilizing appliance to maintain that position with the stabilizing appliance and stabilize that particular joint. That was the pre-op and that is the post-op. She did not require and still does not require any kind of minimally invasive procedures. Now coming to disc displacement without reduction. So without reduction, the patient can actually tell you that which joint is involved. The patient knows that I had a strong noise or a strong displacement. The patient can recollect a displacement episode most of the time and can tell you that this joint is problematic. Lockjaw, many times patient will tell you that I have had locking of the joint. Sometimes I could reduce it myself. Sometimes I had to go and get it reduced. Clicking always before the dislocation. So that is a strong click that the patient will always remember. Then the clinically 25 to 30 mm of opening will be there. There will not be full translation. There will be less. The condyle will not completely translate forward. Like you can see in this picture that the disc is obstructing the complete movement of the condyle ahead. There is mandibular deflection of the involved side, hard end field, pain on loading the joint. So what is the treatment of disc displacement without reduction is if it is painful. If it is painful, I say, because there are many patients who do not have the disc, many patients or people who do not have disc in the right position, but they are asymptomatic. Such patients, such people require no change in the position of the disc as the joint adapts to that new position of the disc. If it is painful, then you must give conservative management first. If no change, then you give an anterior positioning splint. If no change, then you go in for semi-surgical management. If there is change, you can shift to a stabilizing appliance. Or if pain decreases after conservative management, then you can shift to a stabilizing appliance. Okay, so that brings me to an end of all the conservative modalities. If there are any questions, or I'll go ahead with minimally invasive surgery.
I think you could go to minimally invasive. We'll take the questions at the end.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Aishwarya, I want to ask you about the material which you are using for this splint. And what instructions you are giving to the technician to prepare this splint?
Actually, ma'am, the material is similar to any other splints that we make, but it is actually we make our splints ourselves. So the inner portion is the softer acrylic and the outer portion is the hard acrylic that we use. So it is a combination. The inner portion which occludes the teeth is soft and the outer portion is thicker. Now it varies, the thickness of the splint varies from patient to patient depending on what you want. Generally, a stabilizing appliance should have at least a thickness of 1.5 to 2 mm thickness for a stabilizing appliance. And an anterior positioning appliance, of course, you have to decide on what is the position, musculoskeletal position, and also how much anterior positioning you want. So the height of that anterior glide will be that much.
Yes, Abhilash, we will complete presentation and then take the questions.
Okay, okay,
Right,
yes.
ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So that brings me to minimally invasive procedures. So when it comes to minimally invasive procedures, the most common procedure that has been done since ages is arthrocentesis. It can be done through a single puncture or a double puncture. Now, there are various modifications. There are cannulas which have 2 outlets which can be used for instead of giving 2 punctures. Now, the advantages and disadvantages of arthrocentesis, the most advantages is that you can do it in office. You can do it at your clinic. You don't need any special armamentarium for it. It is cheap for the patient as well as the doctor. It can be performed under local anesthesia. It has a lot of literature supporting that it is effective in lysis and lavage of the joint. Disadvantages are that it is a blind procedure. You do not know exactly whether you are able to wash the joint effectively. You do not know what exactly is going on inside the joint because you do not look at the joint. You cannot see. You do not have anything to show the patient after the procedure that this is the reason why I've come to this diagnosis, because there are no images. And there is no further treatment plan that you can really formulate from a blind wash of the joint. That is where arthroscopy comes to place, where you wash the joint as well as have diagnostic information. Where there are 2 types of arthroscopy, which is diagnostic arthroscopy and operative arthroscopy. Now, diagnostic arthroscopy is very similar to just a normal wash and lavage of the joint, which is a level 1 arthroscopy, which is very similar to arthrocentesis. In fact, there are many articles which say that arthrocentesis and diagnostic arthroscopy have the same success rate, almost the same success rate. But arthroscopy holds a higher value in therapeutic arthroscopy, where you can do a biopsy or many other procedures, which I'll come to. So that is level 1. So like I said, level 1 is like a lysis and lavage, just like arthrocentesis. Level 2 is where you put a second puncture, where you can put a laser inside, have a grasper, have a biopsy forceps, and do whatever you want in the joint, debridement, etc. Level 3 is where you have 3 punctures and where you do a discopexy or the suturing of the disc. Now, the most common problem and why it's not so routinely performed is because it requires special armamentarium, which is extremely expensive, and it requires specialized training, which now is available in India, but still lesser than what is available in the developed countries. Now the arthroscopic image or the arthroscopic anatomy of the joint is very different than the normal anatomy of the joint. Now, this is a very old arthroscopic video that we have done, but I like this video for explanatory purpose because this video the joint is a very nice, clean joint, unlike other joints which we see which are very hyperemic. Now, like I said, the disc divides the joint into 2 portions, the posterior portion and the anterior portion. The intermediate portion is the portion of the intermediate zone that meets the condyle, and the portion posterior to it is the posterior portion. The portion anterior to it is the anterior portion. Now, there are various structures. In the posterior portion, there's the retrodiscal tissue, there's a medial synovial drape, and there is a lateral pterygoid shadow. That is that shadow of the pterygoid muscle behind. So this is the posterior portion, where you can see that this is the retrodiscal portion. The inside portion, this white portion on top that you can see in the side like a curtain, this is the medial synovial drape, and the gray portion inside is the lateral pterygoid shadow. Now, when you come anterior to this joint from the posterior portion, you will come to the intermediate zone. That is where the disc and the glenoid fossa meet. That is the intermediate zone, which you will see in the video. And ahead of that is where is the anterior zone or the anterior recess. Yeah, this is the intermediate zone where they meet, the disc and the glenoid fossa. And anterior to this opening that you see is the anterior recess. Now, the entire arthroscopic procedure for the posterior joint space or the posterior recess is done with the mouth open. And when you come anteriorly to this junction of the intermediate zone, you shut the mouth, and that is why that is how you can enter the anterior recess, which is smaller than the posterior recess. So the only time the mouth is shut is when you try to enter the anterior recess. Now, what are the irrigating solutions for arthroscopy? Ringer lactate is the most common solution because of the isotonicity of the solution. Saline can also be used, but RL is better. What is the visco supplementation that can be done? Hyaluronic acid, any steroid, platelet-rich plasma, platelet-rich fibrin, lot of things that can be beneficial in the joint. Steroid should be avoided as much as possible. Hyaluronic acid is the best because it mimics the synovial fluid the maximum, so it is the best inside the joint. Platelet-rich plasma and platelet-rich fibrin can be used for disc. There are articles which show that small perforations and degeneration of the disc, it does help in closing and regenerating the disc. Now, what is the use of a level 1 arthroscopy? After that, you have to give post-operative physiotherapy. Post-operative physiotherapy after arthroscopy is the key. If you do a wash and lavage of the joint and the patient does not move that joint for the next the first 21 days are the key. If the patient does not do good physiotherapy, your arthroscopy is going to fail. So arthroscopy with good post-operative physiotherapy is the only way of success in arthroscopy. Now, the reason why arthroscopy is you can diagnose all these conditions which happen inside the joint, which you cannot with an arthrocentesis when you put a scope inside the joint, be it adhesions, be it hyperemic joint, be it perforations, or be it any kind of chondromatosis or pathology inside the joint. All this can be diagnosed when you do a arthroscopy. So after a level 1 arthroscopy, you have diagnostic information which you can use for patient education and for further treatment plan. What do you need to do next? You can formulate that. Whether you need a second level 2 arthroscopy for any biopsy or removal of any adhesions, or for any hypermobility, you can use a laser to laser on the retrodiscal tissue to reduce the hypermobility. All this retrodiscal contracture basically. All this you can decide after your level 1. Or if you need to do a disc, if there's a disc displacement, if there's a disc displacement and you need to do a level 3 arthroscopy for disc suturing. Now, these are 3 very important articles on TMJ arthroscopy for PGs. This is the most largest study that has been done by Dr. Joe McCain. He has done a 6-year study for 4,831 joints, where he has shown how TMJ arthroscopy has a significant role in diagnosis and treatment of temporomandibular joint disorders, especially in patients who fail conservative management. Similarly, there are 2 other articles by Murakami, which also talks of all the arthroscopic procedures and its advantages. Now, complications of arthroscopy, there are various complications, but they are very similar to arthrocentesis complications. The most common complication of arthroscopy is iatrogenic damage. Basically, you're not used to getting into the joint with a scope and working inside a small space. So when you start doing it in that learning curve, you will cause some amount of damage with your scope inside the joint. That is the most common complication. The second most common complication that you can cause is any kind of ear damage, because the EAC is very close to where you enter the joint. So if you don't enter in the right position, you may enter the ear instead of the joint. So almost all of this we have had, except for I think some vascular problems initially when we started doing arthroscopy. Now, I'll just run through this case of disc displacement. So the patient came with pain on opening since 4 years, reduced opening since 3 years, clicking in the left joint and pain in both right and left joints, restriction of mouth opening and jaw deflects to the right side while opening, pain more on yawning, chewing, talking, pain while eccentric movements to both sides, restriction of movement to the left side more. So the mouth opening was 18 mm. There was the first click on the left side. Maximal opening was 26 mm with pain, hard and feel, no clicking on the right TMJ. Patient had clicking on the left side, not on the right side. No pain on palpation of any muscles. pain at eccentric lateral movements to both sides, restricted lateral movement to the left side, and when he opens, the jaw deflects to the right. Again, now in this, we are suspecting an intracapsular disorder, so there is no question that we'll go ahead with a MRI first. This is the right TMJ MRI where you can see that the disc is displaced anteriorly and in the closed mouth position, and in the open mouth position, it still remains anteriorly displaced. Whereas the left TMJ MRI, the disc is displaced anteriorly, but it is recaptured in the open mouth position. So we come to a diagnosis that it is an anterior disc displacement without reduction on the right side and with reduction on the left side, because of which he had a click on the left side, but he did not have a click on the right side. So what we went ahead and did is a level 3 arthroscopic discopexy on the right side and a level 1 arthroscopic lavage and lysis on the right side, and that is on the left side, and discopexy on the right side, and that is his pre-op and post-op. I will show you the arthroscopic image ahead. Now coming to surgical management, there are various surgical methods: discopexy, discoplasty, removing of the disc, removing of the condyle, shaving of the condyle, removing of the eminence, or total joint replacement. The most important thing is to identify what is required in that particular patient. Now, traditionally, disc plication was done with open joint surgery, where either a part of the retrodiscal tissue was removed and sutured back for the disc to come back, or a Mitek screw was put and then the disc was tied back to that screw. Now we do arthroscopic discopexy, where you pull back the disc with an instrument and then you tie it back. Now the tying back procedures can be varied. The knot can be buried inside or it can be tied outside. There are various methods of doing it. So that is the current advance in it. Now outcomes of arthroscopy, these two articles are very important for PGs. Please read them. This tells you that Wilkie stage 2 and stage 3 is the stage where arthroscopy is maximum successful. When it comes to stage 4 and stage 5, there is a lot of other degenerative joint changes also, where a single arthroscopic procedure may not be sufficient and patient may require second or third procedure depending on the severity of the disease. But a disc plication also in a stage 2 and stage 3 is highly successful. Now, if suppose the disc is very badly damaged in your scopy and you see it, you have to remove it and you do a discectomy, then you have to replace it with something. So that can be either autogenous or it can be silastic or Teflon implants. All that is not any longer used because of the disadvantages and the infections that they cause in the joint. So the autogenous graft is the gold standard still. And some tissue engineering is also being developed for the articular surfaces and the disc, which is very little literature still. If the condyle and fossa reconstruction, costochondral graft and autogenous graft was what we have been doing till now, but the recent advance is doing alloplastic total joint replacement. Now, total joint replacement, where is it done? Normally, it is done in the end stage disease, or when everything else fails, it's only done then. You do not jump to a total joint replacement immediately. So in any kind of trauma, infection, degenerative pathology, or any idiopathic condylar resorption, or any of these cases, you can do a total joint replacement. The two companies that provide joints are the Biomed and the TMJ Concepts. TMJ Concepts does not provide joints in India yet. So it's just the Biomed stock and the custom joint. Now, the most advantages of the stock joint is that the stock joint is readily available. It is cheaper than the custom joint and it is available in different sizes. Disadvantages being the same thing. It is available only in particular sizes. So you have to do your case selection. Not all cases can be done with a custom joint, as that stock joint will not fit that particular case. Then you have to go ahead making a custom joint. A custom joint is something that fits custom to that particular case, where a CAD/CAM image is used to make that joint for that particular patient. So the fit is better. Of course, it's a little more expensive, but there are many Indian companies now which provide custom joints at a cheaper rate. Now, this is a video of how the components of a joint replacement are. This is the condylar component, and this is the condylar component, and this is in function. And this is the glenoid fossa component. Now, there are various articles. This is for PGs again for joint replacement. The most joint replacement, if done the right way, taken enough asepsis and good aseptic control, it has good success rates. The most common problem after a joint replacement is either rejection of the joint, failure of the components of the joint, and the most common or the most scary complication is the infection. So if we are able to avoid any infection in an alloplastic joint, then an alloplastic joint works very well. Now, all this while we were talking of hypermobility of the temporomandibular joint, I'll just brief in a couple of slides on the hypermobility, which is subluxation and dislocation. Now, dislocation can be either acute or chronic. Acute dislocation can be isolated or it can be recurrent. When it comes to subluxation, it means that the joint subluxate, but the patient can put it back himself or herself. So usually no treatment required, only restrict the movement so that the patient does not subluxate. It's self-limiting most of the time. When it comes to dislocation, the condyle moves ahead of the eminence. So that is why sometimes the patient cannot put it back. And if it is recurrent, then it definitely requires treatment. Now the laxity of the ligaments is less, the TMJ capsule has weakened, the size of the eminence is more or less, or there is hyperactivity of the muscle. If there is some trauma, if there is hypermobility because of other factors or occlusal factors, or if it is psychogenic or drug induced, all these are causes of dislocation, which can be acute, chronic, or recurrent. Now the treatment for acute dislocation will be manual reduction first and then restrict the mouth opening. Whereas for chronic recurrent dislocation, the minimally invasive treatment will be injection of any sclerosing agents like alcohol into the joint, which causes some amount of fibrosis in the joint, which will reduce the hypermobility in the joint, which also can be done by injection of blood or prolotherapy, which is dextrose solution injected into the joint. Again, the same function. Or you can have IMF and elastic traction to reduce the opening for a limited period of time, or Botox injection into the lateral pterygoid if that is required. Again, surgical is you can do capsulorrhaphy, like I showed you, cut a part of the capsule and tie it back so that the hypermobility is reduced. Eminectomy if the eminence is very deep. Augmentation of the articular eminence if it is shallow by bone grafts or any of the implants. Now, two controversies, orthodontic treatment and occlusion and TMD. These are two controversies that we speak of every time we speak of TMD. Now, most articles have believed that orthodontic treatment does not really cause TMD. It can be a contributing factor if there was a pre-existing temporomandibular joint problem, then it can contribute to it. Most articles we have come to this consensus that it may not be a cause of the temporomandibular joint problem unless the orthodontic treatment is done so badly to cause the malocclusion, then actually treat it. Now, occlusion, the consensus, again, this is very debatable. There's a school of thought that believes occlusion is the only cause of temporomandibular joint disorder, and there is another school of thought that believes occlusion is a contributing factor to the temporomandibular joint disorder. I am of the school of thought that it is a contributing factor to the temporomandibular joint disorder. Now, the most common factors that can cause this in occlusion is posterior crossbite, overjet or overbite greater than 5 mm, maximum intercuspal gliding greater than 2 mm, edge-to-edge bite, or there is a class 3 malocclusion, it is more common, or there is an anterior open bite, or there are multiple missing teeth which can cause excessive load on the joint. Now, like I said, there are advances there are various tissue engineering like for disc and the cartilage, but again, nothing that has really been proven in literature, so used less. So to summarize in a nutshell, after clinical and radiographic evaluation, establish a diagnosis, conservative management first, followed by semi-conservative, and only if both fail, then open joint surgery. This is the other part of the classification which I cannot cover in one lecture. So that is for PGs. This particular article talks very well of degenerative joint diseases, and This particular article talks very well of the developmental and the tumors of the temporomandibular joints for you all to read for exam purpose. Another few articles for PGs related to the topic that I spoke today.
Hello. Yeah.
Okay, so that comes to, we can take questions.
Yes.
I
Thank
will
you,
start the
Aishwarya.
vote also.
Yes, simultaneously we will be conducting poll also. So all the participants will please attend the poll, and Aishwarya we will be discussing simultaneously the questions.
So let me see. Let me launch the poll.
So shall I ask questions, sir, till the time you set in for poll?
Yeah. Are you able to see this?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes, sir.
attendees, please, you can just scroll up and down. You'll see the questions. There are 5 of them, right? So you need to vote. Aishwarya is not going to get angry if you get it wrong. She'll be happy.
No.
True.
One amazing thing, you know, why we're celebrating this as the Women's Week. Amazing stamina you have, Aishwarya. I drank 5 cups of water.
I'm going to drink that now.
Okay, so please, audience, please vote for it.
Yes, one by one answer all the questions.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, Aishwarya.
Should we read out? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Do you want me to
Yes,
read?
ma'am.
Okay.
Brinda, you only can read out if you want.
Yes, sir. Okay. First question is, which of the following is not a layer of articular surface of mandibular condyle? So your options are articular zone, proliferative zone, fibrocartilage zone, and vascular zone. So 50% have till now answered for proliferative zone.
Okay.
The next question is, which of the following is not one of the etiologies of temporomandibular joint intracapsular disorder? The first option is emotional stress. Second is deep pain input. Third is micro trauma. And MPDS. So already 50% of them have answered for, I think, yes, MPDS.
MPDS.
Third question is, a soft end feel is associated with capsule induced restrictions, muscle induced restrictions, bone induced restrictions, and neuralgias. So, yeah, 67 are for muscle induced restrictions. Fourth question is, arthrocentesis bears superior results with injected with intra-articular injections of hydrocortisons, dextrose, hyaluronic acid, and gentamicin. So most of them are for hyaluronic acid. So till end, Aishwarya, people were listening to you with patience.
Fortunately.
Yeah. Fifth question is, most widely accepted material for manufacturing lignite component of total TMJ prosthesis are polyfluoroethylene, yes, the Vitellium and polydiol glycerin.
I think
once we close the poll, I'll just answer some wrong
yes.
answers.
So that's the end of this.
I will end the poll.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So till that time, Aishwarya, one question coming from yes. According to International Consortium, directive splints are no longer advocated for TMD. Instead, they are recommended for OSA. Is this correct?
They are recommended for it. They do have a role in OSA too. But like I said, directive splints, that means an anterior positioning splint can only be used of significant value only if you know that the disc displacement has not been is not very chronic, because otherwise you are not going to achieve the results that you want with a directive splint if it is a chronic disc displacement. But in acute disc displacements, which are you can use an anterior positioning splint and then shift it to a stabilizing splint. What is said is that you do not use any positioning or directive splint for a long term, because then they will have effect on the remaining teeth which do not occlude. So positioning splints they do change occlusion if they are used in the long term. For short term use, it can be used and then shifted to a stabilizing splint.
Yes. So the other question is, closed lock, as stated in many publications, is an appropriate terminology for disc replacement without reduction, as contrary to open lock means TMJ dislocation.
Closed lock is used for, it is used for disc displacement without reduction. It is a very common term that is used in publications, but otherwise when we talk about it, we do talk of it as disc displacement without reduction.
Yes, very true. Madam, in differential diagnosis with reduction, do you prescribe muscle relaxant with occlusal splints?
Differential diagnosis?
With reduction.
Sorry, ma'am, I didn't. Disc displacement with reduction.
Okay, that must be, yes.
Okay.
Muscle relaxant with splints, do we prescribe?
Disc displacement with reduction, yeah. So like I said, pharmacotherapy is depending on what kind of pain is there. So if the pain is primarily only in the joints and that is being taken care with the splint, then I may not give any adjuvant pharmacotherapy. But if there is a muscle component also and the patient has muscle pain, then I will give adjuvant pharmacotherapy first before going into trigger point injections or anything else for the muscle.
Yes. Can ultrasound guided orthocentesis overcome the limitations of it being a blind procedure?
No. I feel no. I don't know. But I feel ultrasound guided any procedure just helps you get inside the joint and also just shows you what is the activity inside. In terms of ultrasound will not show you the true image of the joint. Like if there is a hyperemia inside the joint, you cannot see it on ultrasound. It is more of guidance to get into the joint, I feel, more than actually helping to substitute for arthroscopy. I don't think so.
Yes. I think you have already answered this. What are the various local autogenous graft for 5 mm disc perforation? Can we use pedicle, tragal, chondral graft?
I think you can, tragal graft you can use. I think all the local grafts that you can use in that area are all autogenous grafts which you can use. This perforation above more than 5 mm is also significant, because smaller perforations generally we do not go ahead and remove the disc, and we generally allow it to do a arthroscopy, put in fibrin or plasma into the joint and allow it to close on its own. Even if you don't put in anything, there are articles that smaller perforations after a good lysis lavage do close or shrink on its own. Only larger perforations which can, or a more degenerative change in the disc really requires the disc to be removed.
Yes. So that's all about the question. One thing I would like to know, Aishwarya, in fact, we can have inputs from Dr. Mukul sir and Dr. Dabir sir. That you explained that when there are changes of physiologic or traumatic, the body slowly adapts to that changes. But when we are doing the changes in the occlusion suddenly, like full mouth rehab, implants, and orthognathic, so what precautions or how to handle those situations? I think if Mukul sir is there, can in short explain us?
Yes.
Sir is there, still logged in. Ashok sir.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll have to check. I think Dabir sir is there.
Just 1 minute. Just 1 minute.
Sir.
Mukul is having some issues. Let me see if I can solve the problem.
Meanwhile, if you can
Meanwhile, should I just
YouTube,
talk of
Aishwarya?
this poll?
Yes.
Meanwhile,
Mukul,
should I just talk
Mukul.
of this poll?
Mukul, I think you can. Mukul Pade, you are unmuted. No.
Shall I try unmuting?
Yeah, Ash, you go ahead by the time Mukul gets it.
Okay, I'll just speak of this poll. So the first answer, majority have answered proliferative zone, which is not right. It is vascular zone because the articulating surfaces are primarily avascular. So the vascular zone is not a part of the articular surface of the mandibular condyle. Which of the following etiologies? Yes, the answer is right. It is MPDS. MPDS is a centrally mediated muscle problem. It is not one of the primary etiologies of an intracapsular disorder. The others are. A soft end feel is associated with muscle-induced restriction. Yes, it is right. It is in a muscle-induced restriction. Arthrocentesis bears superior results with hyaluronic acid. Absolutely right. Most widely accepted material is also polytetrafluoro. So everybody's got everything right.
Okay, Vrinda.
Yes, sir.
Ash, yeah, thank you so
Yes,
much.
sir.
It was amazing.
Thank you so much, sir.
That's the feedback that we've got. The messages are
Thank you,
pouring
sir.
in by the dozen.
Yes, yes.
If you
We
could
can
have, we
answer
have one
coming in
we have
message.
one.
Yes.
Can I just come in?
Yes, yes.
yeah.
Yes, there's a message from Suresh sir, Suresh Menon sir. Excellent start to the series with a comprehensive, precise talk covering all aspects. Congrats, Aishwarya, on your brilliant presentation. He's on YouTube.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, so all questions which are coming in now, we will
sir is in the
answer on.
waiting room. Sir, Mukul sir is in the waiting room.
Yeah, I can.
There's a
Hello, can you hear
message
me?
pop-
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah, Rama. Sorry,
Yes,
I logged in again. Yeah,
Yes.
Vrinda, I liked your question. Yeah, of course, if there's any drastic change in the occlusion, we definitely
Yes.
expect some kind of this in the temporomandibular joint physiology also.
Yes.
But there are very interesting articles regarding orthognathic surgery and TM joint dysfunction as to whether TM joint dysfunction is actually the cause or the effect of orthognathic surgery. I mean, it is also used as a treatment. Orthognathic surgery is also used as a treatment for TM joint
Yes, yes,
dysfunction,
yes.
and it has cause also. So I feel it's still a little bizarre, but any drastic changes in occlusion definitely are going to give the joint excessive stress, and that is exactly what Aishwarya spoke about, the micro trauma which happened over a period of time on the joint. If
Yes.
the joint can adapt to that new stress, it is fine. It changes or molds into the new stress. If it doesn't, then it gives rise to pain and other causes, other symptoms.
Yes. That's a wonderful
I don't know whether
explanation,
sir is still there. Ashok sir is still there. I think he is just on. No, he's
Can
not there.
see him, but I don't know.
May not be there. Yeah.
Yes, may not be. Since 9:30 we are logged in, sir. 9:45
Yeah, excellent
rather.
talk.
Yeah.
Very comprehensive. Only
Yes.
thing this topic is a little vast. I
Yeah,
wish you had done it in
I
2
know.
hours.
I know.
Because
Yes.
I wish I should have spoken little more on arthroscopy, which is the new incoming thing.
Yes.
And then anyway, but
Yes,
excellent,
yes.
very nice.
But otherwise, it's very extensive
Excellent,
and
very
very well
informative.
explained by Aishwarya.
Yeah, excellent, very.
Thank you,
Yes.
thank you.
Mukul, even Sven appreciated it. Huh?
Wonderful presentation,
Don't let me
Aishwarya.
open my
Yes.
mouth.
Sir,
Thank
can
you,
you please allow
everyone.
me to
Thank
share my
Thank
screen?
you.
Yes.
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 So shall I stop sharing?
Yes,
Yes,
Aishwarya,
please.
please.
Yeah, Ashok sir is there.
Yeah, he is
But
there,
he's
but
not
I
active.
think yes. So thank you. No, Ashok sir is, I think, now active. Sir, can you listen to us? Ashok
Just a
sir.
second, sir.
Yeah, I can listen to you. Thank
Sir.
you.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
you want me to say something?
Yeah, we asked you one
There
question,
a very
sir.
important question asked, sir.
I'm sorry, I
Yes.
missed the question. What was the question?
Sir, this was regarding the sudden change in occlusion we are causing by full mouth rehabs, by implants or orthognathic surgeries. So how to tackle those issues? So that was the question.
I think Aishwarya Mukul have answered that question.
Yes, yes. Sir, your inputs.
Yeah, there's a lot of variation, a lot of thinking. Honestly, occlusion is something most maxillofacial deal with TM joint do not feel that occlusion does much. That is a general feeling. Am I right, Mukul?
Yes.
And,
Yes, sir.
yeah.
Agreed, sir.
And the prosthodontists and the other branches, they stick to occlusion and, spend hours and days together. I have one, now that Mukul and me and Aishwarya, I must make one comment on Aishwarya's presentation that she's made such an
He's saying
extensive
maxillofacial
and
don't believe that
fantastic
occlusion has a warranty.
presentation.
That is
Taught
true now.
everything. It looks like that Aishwarya is not going to get any references
That is
now.
not a primary problem.
she has taught the
Evidence-
students so well.
Evidence proved it.
Well done. Very well done.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank-
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
sir.
much.
Okay.
So this is our upcoming
sir.
webinar, which will be on 6th July at 11 a.m. by Dr. Divya Mehrotra. She'll be talking about untangling the challenges of distraction osteogenesis. This is the schedule. Now, this is our QR code for the CIOMS YouTube channel. You can also log in if the seats are full in the Zoom. Then you can also log in our YouTube channel. You can scan the QR code as well. That's it from my side. Should I stop sharing, sir?
Yes. Now I have to do my big duty. Aishwarya, thank you for your excellent presentation.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
This is
Thank you, everybody, all of
So
you.
last this kick hai.
so this certificate is a shade of pink. So
Asha?
yeah, and
Yes, today everything was pink. See,
Lovely.
even sir is wearing a pink shirt.
The shade behind
Yeah,
Rama is
all of us
quite
are
big.
wearing pink.
The shade behind Rama is always very big. Don't worry.
thank you, Vrinda.
Sir,
Thank you for
so much. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
and join us tomorrow at
Yes.
11 a.m. There is the only thing is on Tuesday our webinar will be at 5 p.m. For technical issues, it's at 5 p.m. Otherwise, all 5 days, the remaining 5 days, it's at 11. And Aishwarya, amazing. Like I said, I had through 2 bottles of Coke and 3 bottles of water.
I
And I
will
had
have
2
that
bottles
now.
of beer.
I usually have Coke only, Mukul.
Yeah, I know that. Coke means cocaine.
Coke is Coca-Cola.
So thank you so much
Wonderful presentation.
once again, and do log in
Thank
for
you.
all the
Thank
remaining
you, thank you.
webinars.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
Thank
Mukul
you.
sir,
Bye bye.
Ashok
Bye
sir,
bye.
all our
Thank you,
teachers
thank you.
and all participants. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Rama,
Bye.
Yeah.
happy Guru Purnima.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. To you too.
Mukul
Happy
sir.
Guru Purnima, Rama sir.
Mukul sir.
Bye,
Happy
Abhilasha.
Guru Purnima.
Thank you so much.
Ash, excellent.
Yes.
Wonderful presentation. Wonderful.
Aishwarya, it was
Thank
a
you,
very
thank you.
wonderful presentation. Huh?
Thank you,
Thank you
ma'am.
and wonderful.
Hello, bye, everybody.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.
Please join us tomorrow
Bye,
also.
everybody.
Yes. Bye, everyone, and take care.